Chapter 1848. Where do you think you're going? Lan Xiaoni whipped her tail through the air, and her blue longsword transformed into a series of sharp sword projections as she pursued the heavenly liquid god. The heavenly liquid god's hands suddenly expanded before transforming into a golden liquid that rippled outward. The golden liquid rippled outward at an extremely fast speed, and it even caused the space around it to tremor. Liquid ripple. Lan Xiaoni was just closing in on the heavenly liquid god with her spatial power when she was suddenly struck by an omnipresent force that caused her to falter in her tracks. However, she was able to unleash her powers of the heavenly gods in the nick of time, thereby keeping most of the golden liquid at bay. Lan Xiaoni, do you think I came here unprepared? A ferocious expression appeared on the heavenly liquid god's face. Heavenly mirror god, heavenly weather god, attack! Crack, crack, crack! Countless mirrors suddenly appeared around Lan Xiaoni. An oval-shaped monster that looked like a crystal mirror appeared behind Lan Xiaoni. Lan Xiaoni, you possess the paramount power that all living beings in this world yearn for, but you don't know how to cherish it. How dare you go against the will of the heavenly sea? We will take back your powers on behalf of the heavenly sea. The heavenly mirror god's shrill voice sounded. Ha ha! A burst of foolish laughter also erupted throughout heaven and earth. A chubby fatty appeared in another direction with a mysterious smile on his face. His belly contained wind, thunder, clouds, mist, frost, snow, and all sorts of other phenomena. It was like a ticking time bomb that could explode with terrifying energy at any time. The cultivators of the West Sea Alliance felt their hearts sink to the bottom when they saw two more heavenly gods. Their faces were filled with terror as if they had fallen into an icy cavern. One heavenly god was enough to give them a headache, but now 3 of them had appeared at the same time? How were they supposed to defend themselves? They wouldn't be able to defend themselves even if they sacrificed their lives. Were they going to leave all 3 heavenly gods to Lan Xiaoni? Weather god, go and raid the West Sea Alliance's headquarters. Leave this place to me and the heavenly mirror god. The heavenly liquid god chuckled coldly. He. The fatty chuckled foolishly before turning to Lan Xiaoni and picking his nose. Heavenly mirror god, get the F***ck out of here? The heavenly liquid god let loose an enraged roar as black liquid revolved around its hand before slamming a palm toward the heavenly weather god's chest. Bam! Ao! Fatty screamed as his body flew towards the immortal land above water like a cannonball. Quick! Block it! The expressions of the super mighty changed drastically. They used all their strength to control the goddess of war, Aimo, and stabbed at the fatty with the golden trident. The fat man was given a fright when he sensed that the pitchfork was imbued with powerful heaven-crushing power, and his body dissipated into mist. Chi! The divine trident missed its target. Where did he run off to? Lan Xingyang asked as he looked around. High Priest Gu Yu's pupils contracted as he pointed toward the center of the immortal land above water. It's here. Rumble. Suddenly there was an explosion. The energy of the fusion of wind and thunder spread out in a ring shape. Many of the West Sea Alliance powerful beings didn't even have a chance to react before they were torn to shreds by the terrifying power. Hundreds of large palaces in the surroundings were also instantly reduced to dust under the impact of the energy. Quick! Stop it! Lan Xingyang roared. There was no need for Lan Xingyang to say anything. The West Sea Alliance powerful beings had already unleashed a series of extremely powerful spell techniques upon the heavenly weather god, transforming it into a sea of energy. Boom, 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 all types of spell techniques exploded upon the heavenly weather god's body. Wah wah wah! The fat on the heavenly weather god's body jiggled uncontrollably under the bombardment of the spell techniques, and its massive belly also caved in, making it look like a balloon that had been poked and pulled out by countless fingers. Don't stop attacking. Don't forget to unleash your heaven-crushing true intent. Even a heavenly god would be wounded by so many of us at once. Charge! One West Sea Alliance powerful being after another unleashed spell techniques upon the heavenly weather god in a frenzy. The fat man was bombarded relentlessly by the spell techniques, and a confused expression appeared on his face as he sucked his thumb. "What are you guys doing? It's so itchy, so itchy." The fatso, who was almost engulfed by the spell, scratched his body in complaint. Some of the more powerful mighty figures swayed slightly upon hearing this as expressions of incredulity appeared on their faces. No. How could this be? How could our spell techniques be ineffective? That's impossible. I'm a third-tier powerful being of the heaven-crushing sect. How could my full-power spell techniques be nothing more than tickles? A mighty figure at the return to void pinnacle stage was already beginning to doubt himself. The heavenly weather god had no intention of taking the initiative to attack. Instead, it wriggled on the spot. Boom, boom, boom. It's icy cold. It's so comfortable. I'm hitting it too lightly here. I need to hit it harder. Oh, I've hit it harder. Is it using a blood-burning mystic technique? That's so good. The heavenly weather god adjusted its position as it endured the beatings, and an expression of bliss appeared on its face. F***CK. What the hell is that idiot doing? I told it to slaughter, not to take a beating. The heavenly liquid god was enraged by the sight of the heavenly weather god's miserable state. Lan Xiaoni's fishtail whipped through the air, and her body transformed into a streak of blue light as she tried to fly back to the West Sea Alliance. However, her body accidentally crashed into a transparent mirror. Lan Xiaoni, why are you running so fast? You still haven't returned your heavenly water power. The heavenly mirror god's head suddenly appeared on the transparent mirror, and its crystalline hand shot forth like lightning before clamping down tightly onto Lan Xiaoni's neck. Mirror suppression, reveal your true self. 9 mirrors exuding the paramount power of laws suddenly appeared around Lan Xiaoni. Within each of the mirrors, Lan Xiaoni was forced to lie flat on the ground by a vast burst of golden power. At the same time, the Lan Xiaoni in the real world was also being suppressed by an unimaginable power, which was forcing her to do the exact same thing as the Lan Xiaoni in the mirror. The 9 mirrors unleashed 9 different types of powers. These powers were imbued with the extremely terrifying power of karma, which forced the Lan Xiaoni in the real world to lie flat on the ground through the power of karma. You want to make me submit to a measly power of karma? Lan Xiaoni gritted her teeth as she unleashed her heavenly water power to resist the relentless power of karma. The heavenly mirror god can't suppress you, but what about me? A faint smile appeared on the heavenly liquid god's face as it waved a hand through the air, upon which a black liquid shot forth like a sharp sword. Lan Xiaoni harumphed lightly, and the blue divine halo above her head flashed as a water shield materialized in the air to keep the black liquid at bay. Rip! A bright blue nail that was riddled with divine patterns appeared from within the black liquid, and it was imbued with the power to naturally suppress the heavenly water power. It tore through the water shield and pierced viciously into Lan Xiaoni's heart. Chapter 1849. Blood slowly flowed from the punctured nail. An indescribable pain shot through her heart. Lan Xiaoni let loose a muffled moan as blood trickled down the corners of her lips. A dazzling light erupted from the divine patterns on the surface of the translucent blue nail. A power imbued with absolute will tried to force her to submit and offer her entire body. Lan Xiaoni, submit to the ocean, submit to the heavens, and you will obtain power, eternal life, and everything else. I will give you another chance to choose. The heavenly liquid god's voice was as majestic and ethereal as if it were a heavenly decree. Give me another 10,000 chances, and I will still stand on the side of the human race and Big Boss and Lin. Lan Xiaoni raised her head stubbornly. Her delicate yet adorable features were filled with determination and unyielding will. If that's the case, then die. The heavenly liquid god spoke with a cold expression. Return everything to the ocean. The heavenly mirror god clapped its hands together. Dazzling light erupted forth from the 9 massive mirrors at the same time. Boom! 9 powerful sealing powers stacked upon one another before instantly crashing into Lan Xiaoni's body. She plummeted from the sky into the frozen ocean before shattering the thick layer of ice and sending a massive splash into the air. Her body fell into the ocean, and everything fell silent. Only the sound of flowing water could be heard. Lan Xiaoni felt as if her power of the heavenly gods was being rapidly extracted by the punctured nail. The power of the heavenly gods had already fused perfectly with her body, and if it was forcefully separated from her body would collapse from being unable to endure the damage. She would die. She was also walking toward death. Lan Xiaoni's body sank deeper and deeper into the ocean, and she became more and more drowsy. She really wanted to sleep, and the divine halo of water above her head also gradually dimmed. Ever since she decided to face the heavenly human tribe head-on, she had been mentally prepared to die. But when faced with death, when death enveloped her whole body, she was still very afraid, very terrified, and very much hoped that someone would appear to save her. "Someone save me! Someone save me! I've only written half of my will. I haven't finished it yet. I really don't want to die." Tears welled up in Lan Xiaoni's eyes as tears of indignation flowed from her eyes before disappearing into the seawater. It was only at this moment, at the last moment of her life, that she truly became herself. She became that weak, crybaby mermaid princess who always wanted someone to rely on. But no one could hear her cries for help, and no one could help her. She was the most powerful being in the entire West Sea Alliance, so who else could she rely on? Plop! Her weak body was suddenly hugged. One hand wrapped around her delicate, white back, and the other held onto her slender, smooth fishtail. Her head unconsciously rested on a warm and firm chest. Lan Xiaoni faltered upon seeing this, and she raised her eyes with difficulty, upon which she was completely dumbstruck by the face that she had been thinking about for a very, very long time. "Hey, little brother Lan, this nail in your chest, I'll just pull it out. Is that okay?" Lin asked with some concern. "Is this a hallucination before I die? That's not too bad. Dying in your arms is the most blissful way to die." Lan Xiaoni's eyes were glazed over as she wrapped her arms around Lin's neck. "Seeing as it's a hallucination, there's nothing to be afraid of if I go a little overboard." "Hey, wait, this isn't." The man didn't even get a chance to finish his sentence before he was cut off. It was as if the entire world had fallen silent. Within the tranquil and dark ocean, the beautiful mermaid princess closed her eyes. On the brink of death, she gave him the most passionate kiss she had ever given him. Above the ocean, the heavenly mirror god and the heavenly liquid god's expressions both shifted drastically. "Who's down there? Crap, my powers of the heavenly gods have been severed. Could it be that Lan Xiaoni has broken free from the deep sea burial nail? Impossible. The seal is still there. I can sense that." The conversation between the two heavenly gods reverberated throughout the ocean, and it naturally traveled into Lan Xiaoni's ears. Lan Xiaoni felt like something was amiss. Her sapphire eyes blinked as she stared blankly at the man before her. She was a little dazed and a little dazed. You're real?" Lan Xiaoni's heart thumped violently in her chest, and she gritted her teeth in pain as the nails tore at the wound on her body. Lin was a little dazed. "Underling Lan, I want to save you, but you don't have to be so enthusiastic, do you?" A light blush instantly appeared on Lan Xiaoni's pristine features. Crack, perhaps it was because she was too excited. A crack appeared on the divine halo of water above Lan Xiaoni's head. "Hurry up and tell me how I can save you. You'll be alright if I pull out the nail, right?" Lin could sense the signs that a heavenly god was about to perish from Lan Xiaoni's body. "I'll be fine. This nail will absorb my powers of the heavenly gods. I'll be fine once I pull it out," Lan Xiaoni replied feebly. Lin immediately switched from carrying her in a princess carry to wrapping an arm around her waist while grabbing toward the nail with his other hand. When he tried to use his power to pull the nail out, he felt an incomparably vast power resisting the nail. It was like an endless ocean that couldn't be shaken at all. "Don't you dare ruin our plan! Die!" Two enraged roars erupted in the sky at the same time. Sharp streams of liquid shot into the ocean, hurtling toward Unlin. Countless mirrors appeared in the sky, and an enormous sealing power pierced through the ocean before crashing down upon Unlin's body. "You think you can seal me?" Unlin harumphed coldly as his divine halo and heavenly Tao jade appeared at the same time, creating 5 powers of the heavenly gods to keep the attacks of the 2 heavenly gods at bay. At the same time, he gathered the powers of the 5 heavenly gods in his fingers and clamped down on the nail in Lan Xiaoni's chest before pulling it out with all his might. Rip! The nail was extracted from Lan Xiaoni's chest. Ah! Lan Xiaoni endured the excruciating pain, but she still couldn't help but cry out in the end. These harmful things must be destroyed. Unlin crushed the nail in his hand with all his might. No! Detestable! The 2 heavenly gods in the sky exploded with rage, causing the space around them to tremor violently. Meanwhile, Lan Xiaoni's aura had completely transformed. It had become more and more vast, and the crack on the divine halo above her head had already healed, upon which a divine light that was even more dazzling than before erupted forth. "Thank you, Big Boss Unlin. Thank you for saving me," Lan Xiaoni said in a gentle voice as she looked at Unlin's face. She had thought that she was going to die for sure, but Unlin appeared at the most critical moment and saved her again. What a dreamlike experience. "I've already done so much for you, Big Boss. Isn't it only right and proper for you to protect me?" Unlin smiled. "Yes, yes," Lan Xiaoni replied in a gentle voice with a vibrant smile. "You're a great big boss." Chapter 1850. In the sky above the ocean, the heavenly mirror god and the heavenly liquid god's expressions became extremely dark. "He actually blocked our attack? He even destroyed the deep-sea burial nail bestowed upon me by the heavenly sea god. Wait, that person looks so familiar. Could it be?" The 2 heavenly gods' eyes widened as a sense of foreboding welled up in their hearts. Boom! Splashes erupted from the ocean. Divine technique, origin water heavenly prison. Lan Xiaoni's eyes glowed as boundless divine light erupted from her body. The boundless ocean suddenly began to surge. Immediately afterward, gigantic waves that were 300,000 feet tall suddenly rose from all directions, like a series of majestic water caps, wrapping around the heads of the 2 heavenly gods in the center. What a terrifying power of water! How can she control such a vast amount of water? Not only is there a vast amount of water, but the power is also extremely pure. It is imbued with extremely powerful water true intent and can easily annihilate any living being that enters the water. Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up and run. The 2 heavenly gods rose into the sky in an attempt to escape from the origin water heavenly prison. However, a white-robed figure suddenly appeared above them. Trying to escape? The mountainous divine halo above Unlin's head quickly revolved, and his fist crashed down upon the 2 heavenly gods with the power to crush all things. Boom! The heavenly mirror god and the heavenly liquid god were both blasted into the ocean. At this moment, Lan Xiaoni's origin water heavenly prison had already been constructed. "You heavenly gods want to run after flexing?" Unlin stood proudly in midair as he looked down at the 2 heavenly gods on the surface of the ocean. Lan Xiaoni was also very excited, and she placed her hands on her hip. "You 2 bullied me so badly. Now that Big Boss is here, what are you going to do?" She was like a child who had successfully called her parents to vent her anger. She was so excited that her cheeks were flushed and her eyes were bright. She was even a little eager to try. The heavenly mirror god's body reflected Unlin's body. As expected, it's Unlin from the 4-9 Immortal sect. "We're in trouble now." The heavenly liquid god harumphed coldly. "What are you afraid of? No matter how powerful Unlin is, Can he be more powerful than a god of creation? If the two of us work together, we will definitely be able to break through their encirclement. When Enlin heard the conversation between the two Empyrean gods, he immediately laughed. If I were to deal with the two of you by myself, and you two escape separately, then maybe I can only kill one. But don't forget, I still have a little brother here. Lan Xiaoni swept her tail through the air, and the entire ocean began to roar. She stood proudly at the top of the Origin Water-Sky prison, as if she was the master of the ocean, looking down at the two gods below. The entire ocean is now in my hands. You want to run? Let's burn the entire West Ocean first. The expressions of the two heavenly gods changed again. Run! The heavenly liquid god roared. His entire body turned into a pool of silvery white liquid and condensed into the shape of an arrow. It pierced through the void and drew a silvery white trail in the sky, heading straight for the protective wall of the heavenly prison of Origin Water. Myriad Mirror! The divine halo above the heavenly mirror god's head shattered into countless tiny fragments. Then, the tiny fragments transformed into a heavenly god with the exact same aura and energy fluctuations. Over 10,000 heavenly mirror gods fled in different directions. These 10,000 doppelgangers are actually my true body. As long as one of them can escape, my true body will also be able to escape. What can you do to me? Ha ha! The heavenly mirror god's arrogant laughter reverberated throughout heaven and earth. Then, all of its 10,000 doppelgangers crashed into the water barrier, unable to squeeze through. All of the mirror doppelgangers stuck to the surface of the Origin Water-Sky prison, but they were unable to break through no matter what. Lan Xiaoni looked at the heavenly mirror god, as if she were looking at an idiot. I already possess heavenly god-level power, so why do you always ignore my existence? Why are you using your doppelgangers to ram into my spell formation? Whoosh! The heavenly liquid god's silvery white arrow had already pierced through the protective wall. It was a lot smarter, and it had focused all of its power on a single point, thereby granting it unparalleled penetrative power as it slowly tore through Lan Xiaoni's Origin Water-Sky prison. However, it didn't even have a chance to celebrate. A hand had already grabbed onto the arrow. The hand was imbued with the powers of wind, lightning, mountain, metal, and fire, and the arrow was struck by boundless agony upon contact. Ah! The heavenly liquid god let loose a wail of anguish as it was firmly gripped by Enlin's hand. You want to run away after hurting my underlings? Get the hell back here! Enlin gripped his hand, and the powers of wind, lightning, mountain, and metal exploded at the same time. Terrifying energy transformed into a dazzling ball of energy that destroyed everything it came into contact with. Ah! It hurts. Ultimate liquid body. The heavenly liquid god's silver arrow suddenly became extremely slippery, and it slipped away from Enlin's hand like a slippery eel. It fled from Enlin in an extremely disheveled manner, reverting back to its original form. Its entire body had already been charred black and tattered. The heavenly liquid god stared at Enlin with a wary expression. In its eyes, Enlin's figure was becoming larger and more terrifying. Enlin stood silently in midair, and the mountain divine halo above his head revolved incessantly. 4 heavenly god jades of different shapes and sizes revolved around his body, making him appear as if he were a paramount god who ruled over laws. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was a true god who ruled over laws. After all, Enlin was now able to use 5 different powers of the heavenly gods at once. Each of the powers of the heavenly gods represented the paramount laws of their respective domains, and all of them were now at his disposal. I'm going to kill you! The heavenly liquid god roared with rage. Its hands danced through the air, and 2 streams of scorching liquid shot forth. Extreme heat flow. The scorching liquid shot forth like 2 long whips. Fire god mode. Enlin's skin suddenly turned crimson, and the 7 types of holy flames fused perfectly with his body. His aura soared explosively to the point where even the heavenly liquid god's heart palpitated in fear. At the same time, the fire divine halo appeared above his head, further enhancing the 7 holy flames. Enlin's aura soared explosively once again, reaching an unfathomable level even for the heavenly liquid god. This was the first time Enlin had unleashed his fire sage mode with the fire divine halo around his body. Even he didn't know just how terrifying he was. Whoosh! 2 streams of extreme heat flew toward him. Enlin's expression remained unchanged upon seeing the scorching liquid, which could even twist and melt space itself. He spread open his hands and caught the 2 streams of extreme heat in his hands. Hee, you call this extreme heat flow? It looks like your understanding of temperature is still lacking. A contemptuous smile appeared on Enlin's face as his hands sizzled from the scorching heat. Let me define what heat is for you. Bam! Enlin's body disappeared on the spot. However, before he had even arrived, the space around him had already been twisted and warped by the scorching heat. The heavenly liquid god's expression shifted, and a faint yellow liquid burst forth from its body. Profound technique, liquid rebound. In the next instant, Enlin's fist had already arrived before it. His fist was as dazzling as the sun, and the indescribably high temperatures transformed the fist into a platinum color. Enlin's fist landed on the heavenly liquid god's body, and he did indeed feel as if the heavenly liquid god was trying to rebound his power. However, before he had a chance to do anything, he discovered that the heavenly liquid god's body had already been melted by his fist. Ah! The heavenly liquid god's chest was punctured by Enlin's fist, and its body was engulfed in flames as it fell into the ocean. Chapter 1851. The heavenly liquid god was in despair when it discovered that its powers of the heavenly gods were no match for Enlin. Ever since Enlin had appeared, he had been beating them to a pulp. Well done, Big Boss Enlin. Lan Xiaoni waved her fists with reverence on her face. The heavenly mirror god's heart jolted with fear as it tried to break through the Origin Water heavenly prison. However, the Origin Water heavenly prison was unable to be broken through in a short period of time. Whoosh! Enlin tore through space and launched another punch toward the severely wounded heavenly liquid god. This was an all-out punch unleashed by Enlin in his fire sage mode, which was imbued with the power of the heavenly gods of fire. His fist was imbued with absolute flame power and physical strength. It was as if a well-trained sun had crashed viciously into the heavenly liquid god. Infinite liquid defense. The heavenly liquid god let loose an enraged roar, and its entire body shrank into a liquid state to take on the shape of a water droplet. Boom! It was as if the sun had crashed into the ocean. The entire ocean was scorched into a massive hole by the boundless scorching temperatures. The ocean churned and evaporated as massive tsunamis erupted. Even Lan Xiaoni, who had unleashed the Origin Water heavenly prison, was struck by this punch. However, she was not displeased in the slightest. Instead, she stared at Enlin with an excited expression. Big Boss Enlin, you're so powerful. I can't even take it anymore. The heavenly mirror god was in despair. If you can't take it anymore, then open the Origin Water heavenly prison. Lan Xiaoni shook her head with a firm expression. No. For the sake of Big Boss Enlin, I have to persevere no matter how painful it is. At the center of the ocean caved in. The scorching flames dissipated. The heavenly liquid god's battered body appeared before Enlin again. The divine halo above its head was already cracked, and its expression was extremely ashen. It had lost all of its previous pride and arrogance, and had become extremely dispirited, and there was even a hint of fear in its eyes as it looked at Enlin. The heavenly liquid god knew that if it couldn't think of a way out of this situation, the two of them would most likely perish here, just as Enlin was about to end this battle. West Sea Alliance, immortal land above water. An earth-shattering roar suddenly rang out. "Ar, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts!" The heavenly weather god's stomach had been punctured by the West Sea Alliance's battle spirit Amoy's golden trident, and blood stained its belly red. However, the West Sea Alliance's experts didn't even have time to celebrate before their nightmare arrived. They opened Pandora's box. The heavenly weather god had been basking in the beatings this entire time, but it was completely enraged by that trident. Ah! Screams and angry roars erupted. All types of weather phenomena appeared on the heavenly weather god's stomach, and countless unimaginable weather disasters were unleashed in an instant. The wind howled for 3,000 li. Countless West Sea Alliance powerful beings were torn to shreds by the cutting power hidden in the wind. Bolts of lightning fell like rain, and each and every one of them was imbued with the power of the purest yang essence of lightning, which could destroy the divine Tao and shatter space itself. Even a return to void stage mighty figure would be instantly reduced to charcoal. At the same time, heaven and earth transformed into a realm of frost and snow. An aura of extreme frost permeated the air, and one sea monster after another was frozen into ice sculptures. Hail imbued with extreme kinetic energy fell from the sky, crushing one living being after another into mincemeat. Even the sturdy, immortal land above water was punctured. The clouds and mist transformed into the most powerful trapping formation, trapping all of the living beings on the immortal land above water within it. Aside from that, poison mist, freezing rain, heat waves, all types of weather disasters that were powerful enough to destroy all living beings descended upon the immortal land above water. Crap! My father, Yu Feiyu, and High Priest Gu Yu won't be able to hold off the heavenly weather god's attacks. I have to go and reinforce them. Lan Xiaoni's expression shifted as she prepared to set off. The West Sea Alliance was home to her family and comrade. They were the foundation of her West Sea, and she didn't want to see the West Sea Alliance destroyed just like that. The weather has gone berserk. This is bad. The heavenly mirror god's expression shifted again. Isn't this a good thing for us? As long as the weather attracts Enlin, we'll be able to escape. The heavenly liquid god transmitted her voice to the heavenly mirror god. The two heavenly gods chuckled in unison. Wait, underling Lan, your opponent is not to be underestimated. You won't be able to deal with it. Enlin could sense an extraordinary aura emanating from the heavenly weather god's body. Let me do it. The two heavenly gods were ecstatic. Enlin was quite a tactful person, and he was able to differentiate between the hundreds of thousands of powerful beings stationed at the West Sea Alliance headquarters and the two heavenly gods. They were then greeted by the sight of a semi-transparent blue soul body, Enlin separating itself from Enlin's body. Then, it waved at Lan Xiaoni with a smile. I'll be right back. Enlin's soul body charged toward the heavenly weather god with an unstoppable force, leaving the two heavenly gods completely dumbstruck. The heavenly liquid god, what the hell is that? The heavenly mirror god took a deep breath. This human's consciousness can leave his body? It couldn't help but look at Enlin's physical body with its mirror as it spoke. However, Enlin's physical body turned to it with a sinister smile as a dangerous aura emanated from his body. The heavenly mirror god shuddered. My God! Even after Enlin's consciousness flew away, Enlin's physical body can still move, and his power hasn't been reduced at all. The heavenly liquid god's heart was filled with despair upon hearing this. What do you mean? Is he determined to kill us? No. The heavenly liquid god suddenly said. His physical body's power hasn't been reduced, which means that his physical body is the main component of his life force. His consciousness definitely isn't all that powerful. The heavenly weather god is not going to be easy to deal with, and he'll have no choice but to use his physical body soon. Boom. The heavenly weather god's blood-curdling cries erupted from the distance. The heavenly weather god had been attacked by Enlin's soul body, and its body was riddled with countless golden soul swords. Each and every soul sword was imbued with an extremely potent soul power, and they ravaged the heavenly weather god's body in a frenzy. Is this what you meant when you said his consciousness isn't all that powerful? The 10,000 heavenly mirror gods trembled uncontrollably as they pulled out their mirrors and looked at Enlin's consciousness in the distance. This is a god of creation stage consciousness. The heavenly liquid god. Can someone tell me how a return to void stage cultivator could possess a god of creation stage consciousness? The heavenly liquid god was on the verge of cursing. Could it be that Enlin is a prodigy who's been hiding his true strength? The heavenly mirror god murmured. No. You're all wrong. I'm not a prodigy. Enlin crossed his arms over his chest as 7 holy flames revolved around his body, and a suffocating aura descended. My body can pummel all of you, and my consciousness can also pummel all of you. I'm an all-rounder, not a prodigy. Chapter 1852. Enlin's words left the heavenly liquid god and heavenly mirror god completely speechless. The 2 heavenly gods were struck by an indescribable sense of humiliation and despair. Big Boss Enlin is so cool. Lan Xiaoni's eyes lit up. Boom. Another resounding boom erupted on the immortal land above water. The heavenly weather god was blasted flying for several hundred kilometers by Enlin's Xian Wu fist and out of the immortal land above water. The hundreds of thousands of powerful beings on the immortal land above water felt like they had just escaped death. Is this Enlin's true power? So powerful. He's completely dominating the heavenly weather god. No, this is only a portion of Enlin's power. Don't forget that his body is still facing off against the other 2 heavenly gods. Following him for so many years really wasn't a waste of our time. He's so powerful that I can see hope again. The West Sea Alliance powerful beings knew just how terrifying the heavenly weather god was in its berserk state. It was a being that they wouldn't even be able to break through its defenses. However, Enlin immediately unleashed a barrage of hammers upon the heavenly weather god. Witnessing Enlin's battle with one's own eyes was nowhere near as impressive as hearing about it. The heavenly weather god's blood-curdling cries reverberated throughout heaven and earth. A series of bolts of terrifying lightning were about to strike Enlin, but they strangely changed directions to strike him instead. Gale-force winds howled and transformed into blades of wind that tried to strike Enlin, but they suddenly changed directions and struck itself instead. Most importantly, the heavenly weather god's consciousness was a little unstable. It did not immediately stop unleashing these 2 powers. Instead, it continued to unleash them like an indignant child. Thus, it became even easier for Enlin to deal with the heavenly weather god. After using his golden soul power sword to parry the oncoming frost and snow attacks, he continued to stab the heavenly weather god's body with an unstoppable force. The battle was completely one-sided. The heavenly mirror god and the heavenly liquid god began to panic again. Enlin was already smiling dangerously at them. Enlin transformed into a streak of flames before crashing into the heavenly liquid god's body and continuing to pummel it. The heavenly liquid god didn't even have a chance to retaliate and could only defend with all its might. Heavenly mirror god, we can't continue like this. Let's use our final technique. The heavenly liquid god roared. If that's the case, then it. The heavenly mirror god hesitated. 1 life for 2 lives, it's worth it, the heavenly liquid god yelled. The heavenly mirror god fell silent for a moment before finally gritting its teeth and nodding at the sight of Enlin's invincibility and Lan Xiaoni's origin water heavenly prison. Alright, let's do it. The heavenly mirror god suddenly flew toward the heavenly liquid god. The 2 heavenly deities collided. They reached out their hands and intersected, forming a strange imprint. Power seal, release. The 2 heavenly gods shouted at the same time. Then, the heavenly mirror god and the heavenly liquid god were both blasted flying by Enlin. Boom boom, one of the heavenly mirror god's clones fell into the ocean, and its body exploded as it was unable to withstand the terrifying power of the punch. The heavenly liquid god was in an even worse state. Its body was riddled with holes of all sizes, and the divine halo above its head was also riddled with cracks. It looked as if it were on the brink of death. Power seal released? It doesn't look like anything has changed, Unlin spoke in a condescending manner. All of a sudden, an earth-shattering explosion erupted in the distance. Violent energy exploded in a circular manner, and a figure was flung out from within the destructive energy. Everyone was stunned when they saw that figure. That figure was none other than the consciousness body of Unlin. The semi-transparent blue Unlin's arm had already been blasted off, and he appeared to be in quite a sorry state. Is this Fatso a monster? Unlin stared at the center of the explosion with a wary expression. A gargantuan Fatso over 100,000 feet tall appeared before his eyes. It had a crazed look on its face, and there were hundreds of destructive weather disasters erupting from its massive belly. Each and every weather disaster was over 10 times more powerful than the previous weather disasters. What? The Fatso let loose a roar. The blue and white energy flow suddenly expanded, destroying everything in front of it, from the big rocks, the palaces and pavilions, to the small flowers, birds, insects, fish and dust in the air. Everything was engulfed and annihilated by the strange blue and white energy flow, becoming a part of the atmosphere. 1/5 of the entire continent of the immortal land above water was devoured by the fatty's roar. Even divine sense Unlin was blasted back several hundred kilometers by the force of the roar. What the hell is this thing? Isn't this power a little too terrifying? Unlin discovered that even when he tried to use his heavenly god powers to control his opponent's wind and lightning, he was met with a certain degree of resistance. It was as if his opponent could also control the essential laws and forcibly seize control of them. A smug smile appeared on the heavenly liquid god's face upon seeing this. Do you see that? This is the true power of the heavenly weather god. It is the heavenly god whose power is closest to the heavenly sea gods. However, because its power is too powerful, it has affected the condensation of its consciousness, which is why it has become an idiot. It is unable to control its power freely due to the fact that its power is too powerful, which is why it was sealed by the heavenly sea god. Now that the seal has been removed, no one will be able to stop it. The heavenly mirror god shone a mirror at the heavenly weather god in an attempt to gauge its power, only for the mirror to instantly shatter. Its power has already reached the absolute limit. No one will be able to stop the heavenly weather god now. The heavenly mirror god exclaimed with excitement. A thick layer of ice materialized over the ocean again. This time, the area of effect was even larger, reaching an area of several thousand kilometers. All-encompassing frost explosion. The Fatso spread open his arms, and the power of extreme frost transformed into a blue shockwave that crashed violently into Unlin's body, along with countless shards of lethal ice. Unlin slashed his golden soul sword toward the blue shockwave, slicing it in half. However, not only was the blue shockwave extremely powerful, but it was also almost limitless. Even though Unlin was able to slice through his opponent's shockwave, he didn't think that his opponent would be able to unleash shockwaves non-stop like a perpetual motion machine. F***CK. What the hell is this Fatso? Unlin was astonished. His golden soul sword cracked open and was reduced to dust. Then, his body was struck by the blue shockwave and quickly froze before exploding with a loud bang. Unlin's consciousness had been destroyed by the Fatso. Unlin let loose a muffled groan as blood trickled from the corners of his lips. His consciousness had already returned to his body, but it had become extremely feeble and could no longer leave his body to attack. The heavenly weather god's essence is energy, and it can transform energy into countless phenomena. All of the energy in this world can be used by it as its weapon. Unlin, how are you going to fight it? The heavenly liquid god chuckled triumphantly. The heavenly weather god should be proud of itself for being able to kill my consciousness. Who would have thought that this idiot would be a hidden boss? Enlil took a deep breath before charging toward the heavenly weather god on the immortal land above water. There was no time to hesitate now. He had to kill the heavenly weather god as quickly as possible. Chapter 1853. Enlil is finally gone. We have a chance to escape. The heavenly mirror god exclaimed excitedly. The heavenly liquid god also heaved a sigh of relief. We have to get away now. The heavenly weather god has become completely ruthless after being unsealed, so we won't be able to take it with us anymore. Let's just let it unleash its final might and bury the West Sea Alliance in the ocean. It would be best if we can kill Enlil and Lan Xiaoni as well, the heavenly mirror god said. If they had chosen to fight to the death instead of running away, Enlil would definitely have been killed, the heavenly liquid god said in a confident voice. That's a representative of the heavenly sea god. Forget about what's happening here. Let's seize this opportunity to escape, the heavenly mirror god urged. Do you really think you can escape? Enlil might have left, but don't forget that I'm still here. Lan Xiaoni harumphed with furrowed brows. Haha, without Enlil, do you really think you can stop us? A cold smile appeared on the heavenly mirror god's face as its 10,000 clones fused back into its original body. There was not a single hint of fear in its eyes as it looked at Lan Xiaoni. What are you talking about? I have a bold idea. A ferocious expression appeared on the heavenly liquid god's face as it looked at Lan Xiaoni. We've already lost a heavenly god, and it would be too much for us to just leave like this. Why don't we kill Lan Xiaoni first, then escape? But Enlil, the heavenly mirror god, was hesitant. Enlil is facing the most powerful form of the heavenly weather god, so he's already struggling to fend for himself. How is he supposed to care about what's happening here? The heavenly liquid god chuckled coldly. That makes sense. The heavenly mirror god's eyes lit up. The two heavenly gods glared at Lan Xiaoni with hostile expressions. Come on, kill me if you have the ability. Lan Xiaoni whipped her tail through the air, and the ocean instantly began to roar. 6 water dragons over 100,000 feet in length rose into the air, and the power of the origin water surged through the air as they stared at the two heavenly gods with menacing expressions. She was just a little worried that she wouldn't be able to stop the two gods from breaking out of the encirclement. Now that the two gods had evil intentions towards her, she could use this opportunity to stall the two gods. As for her life being in danger? Sorry, boss is still here. How could her life be in danger? Lan Xiaoni was feeling extremely safe now. The heavenly mirror god unleashed 6 mirrors toward Lan Xiaoni. Mirror source copy. Boom boom boom. The pillars of water soared into the sky before materializing into 6 water dragons with identical figures and auras, all of which pounced toward Lan Xiaoni. Lan Xiaoni's expression darkened. She hated people imitating her power the most. The water dragons tore at each other in the sky, and for a moment, they were evenly matched. However, this wasn't the end of it. The heavenly mirror god suddenly produced 18 more mirrors in the air. Mirror source, triple copy. 18 water dragons over 100,000 feet in length surged toward Lan Xiaoni with identical power. The situation suddenly took a turn for the worse. Heavenly liquid god, let's finish this battle as soon as possible, the heavenly mirror god said with a pale expression. It was obvious that this move had consumed a lot of its energy. No problem, I'll finish her off with my next move. The heavenly liquid god summoned a series of rivers that exuded terrifying might. Some of them were extremely sticky, some of them were extremely elastic, some of them were scorching hot, some of them were extremely poisonous, and some of them were even capable of causing particles to explode. Liquid essence, 10,000 streams converged to the sea. A series of rivers of different elements converged toward Lan Xiaoni, quickly forming a sea of liquid that was powerful enough to destroy all things. Lan Xiaoni's body was engulfed. The 24 water dragons tore the 6 water dragons to shreds before also diving toward the center of the sea of liquid. At the immortal land above water. snowflakes swept through the air like sabers. Metal! Unlin wielded his evil-slaying sword, and an extremely sharp power of laws imbued with the power of laws imbued itself onto the inky black sword blade, making it as crimson as blood. Whoosh! Just a single sword strike sliced through all of the snowflakes before him. Unlin quickly approached the heavenly weather god. Wah! The heavenly weather god roared with rage at Unlin. A blue shockwave erupted from its stomach, bringing with it blades of ice, hail, and tornadoes of extreme frost with it as it hurtled toward Unlin. This was the technique that had vanquished Unlin's consciousness. Just because my consciousness can't defend against it doesn't mean that I can't defend against it. The divine halo above Unlin's head suddenly turned crimson, and scorching waves of flames erupted forth to incinerate all things. Unlin activated his heavenly fire power and 7 holy flames again, and he quickly approached the heavenly weather god like a miniature sun. The boundless blue shockwave was incinerated into nothingness by the scorching power of flames that threatened to scorch even space itself as it approached Unlin. This wasn't an issue of power. Instead, it was an issue of power. Unlin now wielded the most essential power of fire between heaven and earth, so he was naturally able to nullify his opponent's blue shockwave, which was imbued with extreme frost. So what if your power is boundless? I'm not scared of you. Unlin's scorching body tore through the frosty air as he quickly approached the heavenly weather god, which was over 100,000 feet tall. His heavenly god Tao Jade glowed with a scintillating light, and he extended his 5 fingers. One finger was as sharp as a sword, one finger was as heavy as a mountain, one finger was roaring with lightning, one finger was as traceless as wind, and one finger was as scorching as fire. He had imbued his claws with all 5 powers of the heavenly gods. Break through! Unlin's claws plunged into the heavenly weather god's stomach. All 5 powers of the heavenly gods exploded at the same time. Rumble! Even with the heavenly weather god's extremely powerful defenses, a massive hole of several thousand feet in length was blasted into its stomach by Unlin's attack. Ow ow ow! This was the first time the heavenly weather god had been wounded in its unsealed state, and it immediately let loose a wail of anguish. You blasted me, so I'll blast you back. Explode! A dazzling divine light suddenly erupted from its stomach, which had already been blasted with a hole. And then, right before Unlin's incredulous eyes, the heavenly weather god's stomach exploded of its own accord. Boom! Over 100 weather disasters erupted at the same time. Sandstorms, poisonous miasma, lightning, blades of wind, hail, flying snow, and rock explosions all exploded at the same time, tearing at Unlin's body. Unlin was caught off guard, and his body was riddled with wounds. Not only were the heavenly weather god's attacks extremely powerful, but they were also extremely powerful. Unlin was even struck by the feeling that he was battling a heavenly god that also wielded many powers of the heavenly gods. Wind, lightning, sand, poison, mist, ice, lava. All of the heavenly weather god possessed powers that were close to the essence of the heavenly gods. In particular, after the heavenly weather god's seal had been broken, even though Unlin possessed the powers of the heavenly gods of wind and lightning, it was still very difficult for him to control the heavenly weather god's wind and lightning technique. Wahahaha! I've been wounded, I've been wounded! The heavenly weather god chortled with glee at the sight of the wounded Unlin, and vital energy surged for several thousand kilometers before converging to form a gargantuan vortex to reform its stomach. What powerful regenerative abilities! Unlin's heart sank upon seeing this, and he swallowed an immortal pill to quickly recover from his injuries. The heavenly weather god could recover from its injuries just by inhaling, but Unlin could only recover from his injuries by swallowing immortal pills. Unlin was feeling very disgruntled by this comparison. No, there was no end in sight to this rate of exhaustion. He had to find an opportunity. He had to find an opportunity to kill the heavenly weather god. Chapter 1854. Wah! The heavenly weather god pouted with a smug and mocking expression as it looked at Enlin. Even though it was stupid, it knew that Enlin was no ordinary person, so it decided to challenge Enlin to a fight. The heavenly weather god was like an invincible ancient fiend celestial with a yellow sandstorm revolving around its left hand, a corrosive poisonous mist emanating from its right hand, and a tail constructed from a tornado of wind blades behind it. White clouds and mist transformed into an apron that enshrouded its muscular waist. Countless bolts of terrifying lightning exploded above its head, and the dark clouds in the sky acted as its parasol. It made its way toward Enlin, and the ground beneath its feet transformed into a realm of absolute frost. Enlin analyzed the heavenly weather god's special characteristics in his mind as he looked at the oncoming heavenly weather god. Among all of the normal heavenly gods that he had encountered, this person was the most powerful one. The heavenly weather god could control over 100 types of weather powers in this world, and all of them could be used at the same time. Most importantly, it seemed to possess boundless power, and it was able to use its power to its heart's content. Furthermore, its regenerative abilities were extremely powerful. Even if it were to self-detonate, it could still use the omnipresent energy of heaven and earth to quickly recover from its injuries. It could control many types of powers that were close to essential, and it was one of the most powerful heavenly gods in terms of explosive power, durability, and regenerative abilities. Enlin's flesh crawled upon hearing this. The heavenly weather god was extremely powerful, almost to the point of being invincible. However, it wasn't truly invincible. In reality, no heavenly god was invincible. Even the heavenly time god, who could reverse time infinitely, would be forced to self-detonate in the face of absolute power. That's right, as long as he had absolute power. Did he really have to use that technique? If he couldn't kill this enemy, Enlin fell into a state of hesitation. It was also at this moment that an invisible and paramount power suddenly proliferated throughout heaven and earth. The ocean was overturned and the sky was reversed. When everyone came back to their senses, heaven and earth had changed. The sky had become the earth, and the ocean had become the sky. Countless West Sea Alliance powerful beings were caught off guard, and they crashed heavily into the invisible sky, as if they had crashed into a transparent glass mirror. Even the heavenly weather god's head fell to the ground amid a series of wails before its body slammed into the invisible ground that was modeled after the sky. Isn't this the scene at the end of the Western Sea? Why is this place? Guyu was astonished. This is Lan Er's ability, Lan Xingyang said in a solemn voice. This is the most powerful domain she can unleash after awakening her power of water. Heaven is the earth, water is the heavens. Water is supreme. Inside the source water heavenly prison, Lan Xiaoni's entire body was enshrouded by boundless divine water, and her battle intent surged as she unleashed her aura to repel all external powers. Streams of extremely pure water, like holy water that could wash away all the filth in the world, tore the ocean that was made of different kinds of liquids into pieces. She stretched out her white, jade-like hand towards the ocean in the sky and gently pressed down. If the sky is water, then I am the sky. I am the supreme being. A clear shout resounded throughout the world. The upside-down ocean in the sky surged and roared for over 1,500 kilometers. Pillars of water fell from the sky before crashing into the water dragons, pulverizing all of the water dragons replicated by the heavenly mirror god. In her current state, Lan Xiaoni could even suppress 2 heavenly gods at once. Did underling Lan unleash her heavenly god domain? Enlin became quite concerned. He had battled against the heavenly gods for a long time, so he knew what kind of price one had to pay to unleash a power of this caliber. Lan Xiaoni would soon be unable to hold on. If she couldn't kill her opponent while unleashing her heavenly god domain, then she would be dead. If she couldn't unleash her heavenly god domain and kill her opponent, then she would be dead. He couldn't let her take such a risk. As her big boss, He couldn't let her take such a risk. A determined expression gradually appeared on Enlin's face. He took a deep breath before bringing out 3 first-grade immortal pills from his storage ring before placing them in his mouth. It was time to use this technique. The heavenly weather god was like a massive boss with lightning above its head and ice and frost beneath its feet. It charged toward Enlin with unstoppable force, and its aura of destruction was already making the space around it tremor violently. Enlin closed his eyes and raised his evil-slaying sword high into the air. Black energy spread from beneath his feet, instantly dyeing the entire sky and earth black. Frost and ice began to spread from the ground beneath the heavenly weather god's feet, but the frost and ice were instantly corroded and engulfed at a rate discernible to the naked eye. Enlin's shirt began to explode as black divine patterns appeared all over his body, emanating bursts of black light. The divine rune on his chest resembled the face of an extremely dignified man. His expression was ethereal and transcendent, as well as boundless battle intent. The black divine patterns on his back resembled a pair of black bone wings. It was a very abstract design, but it gave one the illusion that he could fly into the sky at any moment. High-rank war god mystic technique, dark immortal transformation. Huh? Why is the sky so dark? The heavenly weather god discovered that aside from the divine light it was releasing, everything else had been plunged into darkness. Regardless of whether it was the suspended ocean or the snow-covered ground, everything had been plunged into an inky black abyss. However, there was still a person up ahead who was holding a long sword high into the air. That person opened his eyes that had been closed all this time. Within his eyes, there were black and white flying fish revolving around each other. It was as if the black and white eyes had appeared on the same eye at the same time, giving off a peculiar aura. His aura gradually rose. It wasn't very threatening, but it was as if he were gradually disappearing from this world. He stared at the heavenly weather god, as if he were a grown man staring at an ant on the ground. They were on completely different levels. The deranged and idiotic heavenly weather god was the first to be struck by fear, as if it were being stared at by some terrifying being. Boom! The black sword chi was like the sharpest sword in the world. It soared into the sky and instantly pierced through the darkness, the inverted sea, and everything between the heavens and the earth. It pierced straight into the unseen depths, and then slashed down like a black meteor, cutting everything in front of it apart. Wah! The heavenly weather god was struck by a sense of lethal peril, and it instinctively unleashed all of the power within its body. Over 100 types of weather disasters exploded at once, creating an unimaginable power that surged toward the black sword intent. Whoosh! The black sword intent fell. It sliced through over 100 types of weather disasters as if they were tofu before landing on the heavenly weather god's head, slicing through its head, its body, and even the ground beneath its feet. Everything that the black sword passed through was neatly sliced in half, without exception. Chapter 1855. The sky and earth were plunged into darkness. All of the West Sea Alliance powerful beings trembled uncontrollably and didn't dare to move. Lan Xiaoni, who was unleashing her heavenly god domain, felt as if her powers of laws were about to be sucked away by the darkness, as if the darkness before her was the most regal existence in this world. When that sky-piercing black sword descended, her authority domain was even more violently affected, and it was directly broken apart. The water and sky reversed again. The ocean appeared down below. The sky became a blue sky with white clouds. The absolute darkness had already dissipated. Only the ocean had been sliced in half, and there was a sword gash of unfathomable depth on the gash. Boundless seawater poured into the gash, but it seemed as if it would never be able to fill up the inky black gash. The massive heavenly weather god's body had already been sliced in half. Black sword intent flowed along the incision and quickly engulfed its entire body. The heavenly weather god disappeared before it even had a chance to wail in anguish. Heaven and earth fell into an eerie silence. Everything seemed to have taken a very long time, but less than 3 seconds had actually passed. In that short span of 3 seconds, the heavenly weather god had been sliced into nothingness. There was no longer the fatso's silly laughter, no more weather disasters, no more turbulence, only the ocean that had been sliced in half. The seawater continued to pour into the ocean like 2 waterfalls with no end in sight. Hundreds of thousands of West Sea powerful beings turned their eyes toward the man standing in midair. He was just standing there without doing anything, but all of them were already revering him like a god. Lan Xingyang murmured to himself, "Unlin's sword strike, is this terrifying? To be able to unleash such an earth-shattering technique, I'd believe it even if you told me that Unlin was a god of creation. No, that's not right. Even a god of creation wouldn't be able to unleash a technique like this." Yu Feiyu swung her long and slender fishtail, and even she was a little dazed. A smile appeared on Gu Yu's face. "Perhaps this is the symbol of the glorious future of our West Sea. Big Boss Unlin is so cool." Lan Xiaoni looked at the man in the distance with a bright light in her eyes before turning toward the 2 heavenly gods with a scorching light in her eyes. The 2 heavenly gods were waiting for Lan Xiaoni to run out of energy so that they could retaliate. However, what was going on now? The most powerful heavenly god below the heavenly sea god had been slain by a single sword strike? In the next second, Unlin turned around and looked at the 2 heavenly gods in the distance with a friendly smile. A hint of horror instantly welled up in the hearts of the heavenly mirror god and the heavenly liquid god. If Unlin attacked them again, although they instinctively felt that Unlin wouldn't be able to use such a terrifying move again, what if Unlin's aura was still very strong at this moment, and his deterrence was even more heaven-defying? "Run! Run!" The heavenly liquid god let loose a strange cry as it activated the power of its divine halo to the extreme. It transformed into a silvery gray liquid that fled into the distance with no regard for its life. "Wait for me." The heavenly mirror god also let loose a cry of surprise as it transformed the space before it into a mirror. Its body then disappeared on the spot before reappearing from the heavenly void mirror god. Like this, it was able to escape extremely quickly. Lan Xiaoni summoned countless ropes imbued with the power of water to ensnare the heavenly mirror god and the heavenly liquid god. "Don't even think about escaping. I'll hold you off even if I die." Unlin almost pissed himself upon seeing this, and he immediately transmitted his voice. "Don't let them escape. I know, don't let them escape. Watch me. Origin water heavenly flight." Lan Xiaoni activated the power of her divine halo with all her might, and a pair of golden water wings over 10,000 feet in length appeared on her back. The entire ocean surged violently as a burst of power rose up to support her body. "Don't. I'm saying, don't chase them. Let them escape." Unlin transmitted his voice in a panicked voice. Lan Xiaoni faltered slightly upon seeing this, and she asked hesitantly, "This is such a good opportunity. Are you not going to kill them?" Unlin heaved a faint sigh of relief upon seeing Lan Xiaoni. "If I don't do anything, will you be able to kill the 2 of them on your own?" Lan Xiaoni paused momentarily before replying, "I'll be killed by them." Unlin splayed his hands open. "In my current state, even a soul formation stage trash can kill me." Lan Xiaoni's expression shifted, and she flung her fishtail through the air as she instantly appeared before Unlin. "Big Boss Unlin, are you alright? My God! Your blood, your consciousness, why are you so feeble?" Lan Xiaoni laid a hand on Unlin's chest, upon which she was given a massive fright. It was as if his body had been completely sucked dry. All of its energy was gone, and he looked like he was on the brink of death. "Why else do you think I told you to stop chasing them?" Unlin sighed with resignation. "If it weren't for the fact that I swallowed 3 first-grade immortal pills to replenish my energy, I would have been rooted to the spot after using my dark immortal transformation. I wouldn't even have the chance to flex and scare them away. Tears welled up in Lan Xiaoni's eyes upon hearing this, and she gripped tightly onto Enlin's hand with excitement. "Big Boss Enlin, I didn't think you would take such a risk for me." She was very touched and very happy to have someone like him as her pillar of support. A long-lost feeling welled up in her heart, and she wanted nothing more than to lie in Enlin's arms and weep. All of a sudden, Enlin's aura swelled explosively. A vast amount of information flowed into his mind, and boundless Tao realm true intent began to fuse with his body. A series of notifications also began to pop up from his system. "Congratulations, host, for breaking through to the second stage of the divine liquid creation technique. Congratulations, host, for breaking through to the third stage of the divine liquid creation technique. Congratulations, host, for breaking through to the fourth stage of the divine liquid creation technique. Congratulations, host, for breaking through to the ninth stage of the divine liquid creation technique. Water-type cultivation method, essence of flow, perfected. You have obtained the power of the all-creation heavenly God." A colorful divine halo appeared above Enlin's head. "That's the heavenly weather god's divine halo. My God. This is, Enlin was most likely able to obtain so many powers of the heavenly gods through this method. His identity is extremely terrifying. Even though the West Sea Alliance powerful beings were mentally prepared for this, they were still completely astonished upon seeing this. Enlin quickly put away his divine halo with a hint of elation on his face. "Congratulations, Big Boss Enlin. You've obtained more power." Lan Xiaoni smiled, and two adorable dimples appeared on her face. Enlin patted Lan Xiaoni's head with an elated expression. "It's all thanks to you for drawing the target here. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to obtain this power so easily." Ever since he had absorbed the power of the heavenly mountain god and perfected his earth-type cultivation method, he knew that he didn't have to absorb the power of the heavenly god in order to perfect his water-type cultivation method. Any heavenly god that was related to water would do. The heavenly weather god possessed the power of extreme frost, which was related to water. It was exactly because of this that Enlin was able to perfect his water-type cultivation method. Now, among the 5 elemental cultivation methods, only the wood attribute cultivation method was left. As long as he could obtain a wood-type cultivation method, his body of the war god would be able to reach the phenomenal success stage. Chapter 1856. The power of the weather god appeared to be a little messy, but there was no doubt that this was a power suitable for large-scale destruction. After fusing with the power of the weather god, Enlin knew that if he were to unleash the power of the weather god, he would be able to transform an area of several million square kilometers into a realm of death. He was basically a walking machine of destruction in human form. Most importantly, the power of the weather god also had the ability to control energy, which was the closest to the essence. Hot chi and cold chi were just the beginning. There was still the use of spiritual aura and essence chi, which were the most important. If he used them well, Enlin wouldn't lack energy in battle in the future. He would have an endless supply of vital energy and insane stamina. In my current state, I can kill the heavenly weather god with everything I have. Enlin carefully sensed the power flowing through his body before continuing. According to the heavenly liquid god, the heavenly weather god is the most powerful heavenly god under the heavenly sea god's command. This means that normal heavenly gods can't do anything to me now. I wonder how far away I am from the most powerful heavenly gods. He thought back to the golden woman he had seen in the Purple Star civilization ruins. There were tens of thousands of essential phenomena behind her, and she was able to unleash devastating power with just a casual attack. Even thinking back to that power, he was struck by despair. Paramount heavenly gods were on completely different levels from normal heavenly gods. Perhaps he would only be able to deal with paramount heavenly gods when his body of the war god reached the phenomenal success stage. Sect Leader Enlin, thank you for coming in time to save us from our current predicament. Gu Yu quickly swam through the air before arriving before Enlin. You're far too kind, Senior Gu Yu. The West Sea Alliance has always been a friendly alliance with the human race, so how could I just stand by and watch? Besides, my most important underling is also here. Enlin patted Lan Xiaoni's head with a smile. Lan Xiaoni wore a shy expression, and tears welled up in her beautiful blue eyes as she lowered her head like a timid little girl. The domineering West Sea Alliance leader that she had once been was nowhere to be seen. Ha ha! Sect Leader Enlin, I'm glad to hear that. We'll have to rely on you to defend against the heavenly gods in the future. Lan Xingyang laughed heartily as he flew toward Lan Xiaoni from afar, not forgetting to give Lan Xiaoni an encouraging look. Sect Leader Enlin's power is unparalleled. Even if the paramount heavenly sea god were to appear, we would still be safe. Yu Feiyu was full of praise. Then, there was another wave of bragging. Enlin was welcomed into the main palace of the West Sea Alliance to discuss the next step of the plan. He had come here to investigate the massive hole that had appeared in the West Sea. However, who would have thought that he would slay one of the heavenly sea god's generals as soon as he arrived at the West Sea Alliance? This matter would definitely provoke the other party. The heavenly sea god definitely wasn't going to give him a Starfire battleship like he had in the past. The next time they met, he was most likely going to open fire. I suggest that we retreat 500,000 kilometers to the border between the ocean and the land, then set up the most powerful warning system from the black hole to our West Sea Alliance headquarters. That way, we'll be able to inform the headquarters of the heavenly sea god's movement. Enlin looked at all of the West Sea Alliance mighty figures with a serious expression. The heavenly sea god is not someone you can deal with. All you can do is monitor the situation and inform me of the situation as quickly as possible. What Enlin was trying to say was that all of the mighty figures needed to do was to act as the scouts. All of the mighty figures were not enraged by this. Instead, they nodded in agreement. The heavenly weather god alone was enough to wipe them out. If the heavenly sea god were to show up and force them to kill him on sight, then they would truly be asking for trouble. What kind of enemies would they have to deal with? Among all of the powerful beings present, the only one who could contend with the heavenly sea god was Enlin. The retreat of the battlefront gave the West Sea Alliance more room to maneuver, and it also allowed them to draw closer to the gods of creation on the Tai Chu continent. Thus, this decision was quickly approved by everyone. The conference concluded very quickly. The next step was to repair the immortal land above water before making arrangements for the migration. The 5 Dao integration stage super mighty figures could take care of these matters, so there was no need for Enlin to worry about them. Big Boss Enlin, you can stay here and recuperate from your injuries. Lan Xiaoni led Enlin to a small courtyard with the most abundant spiritual aura, and she latched onto Enlin's arm with a smile. What kind of seafood do you like to eat? I'll cook for you. Enlin faltered slightly before pinching Lan Xiaoni's cheek with a smile. I'm not picky. I'm fine with anything as long as it's delicious. When it came to food, he had always been very specific. He liked anything that tasted good. Sigh. What a perfunctory answer. Lan Xiaoni pouted with displeasure. Even though that was what she said, she was already itching to try it out. She finally had a chance to showcase her cooking skills in front of Enlin, and she was not going to pass up on this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. She knew that Enlin was a foodie. She also knew that Su Xiaolan was the chef god of the celestial court. However, Lan Xiaoni was fearless. I might not be as good as you at cooking other dishes, but when it comes to seafood, I can definitely make it better than you. Lan Xiaoni spoke in a gentle voice as a ball of flames burned in her beautiful eyes. Her cooking skills were very good, and with the power of the heavenly god of water, she was able to preserve the freshness of the seafood to the fullest extent, thereby allowing her to create exquisite delicacies and even special effects. What are you muttering about? Enlin blinked. Huh? No, nothing. Lan Xiaoni hurriedly shook her head before running away. Rest well, Big Boss and Lin, Xiaoni is going to cook some delicious food. And Lin was a little perplexed as he looked at the flustered and blushing Lan Xiaoni running away. However, he repressed his thoughts and began to recover from his injuries. With the assistance of the heavenly god of weather, his recovery rate had improved significantly. Even without any medicine, he would be able to recover to his peak condition in 2 days. At this moment, within the white nectar sea of the Tai Chu continent, at the center of the pure white sea, a divine tree that extended straight into the clouds emitted a rustling sound. A woman in a light green dress sat on a branch that extended outward, swinging her slender white feet. She tucked her jet-black hair behind her ear, and a smile suddenly appeared on her extraordinarily beautiful features. Lin really is something. He even killed the heavenly weather god. At the very top of the sky, an old and huge human head appeared. It was materialized from clouds and mist, and its face encompassed almost the entire sky. Not yet. There's still too much of a disparity between them. We have to help Lin again. Chapter 1857. You still want to help? The woman was a little taken aback. Lin isn't weak anymore. He can be said to be the most powerful heavenly god among the normal heavenly gods. That's not enough. I want to nurture him into a being that can pose a threat to the paramount heavenly gods. The face in the sky spoke. Heavenly God, have you gone insane? The woman glared at the face in the sky with an enraged expression. This is too risky. I don't agree. The face belonged to one of the 6 paramount heavenly gods, the heavenly heaven god. The extremely beautiful woman with long black hair was none other than the heavenly life god, who wielded the paramount power of life. Don't worry, I've done my calculations. Even if Lin can rival one of the 6 paramount heavenly gods, the human race will still perish. They won't be able to defeat the 3 paramount heavenly gods, the heavenly heaven god said in a cold voice. Your heavenly divination technique is flawless, but that's only true in the face of the heavenly Tao. You won't be able to divine anything that transcends beyond the heavenly Tao. The heavenly life goddess was still hesitant. Don't worry. Even if things get out of hand, we still have a final resort. Do you think anyone can break our final trump card? The heavenly heaven god insisted. The woman fell silent. Think about it, life. If light, sea, and earth don't lose 2 paramount heavenly gods when they destroy the human race, then we won't be able to carry out our plan to destroy the entire world. The heavenly heaven god urged. Another long silence ensued. Leaves rustled in the wind. A few ethereal cries sounded from the branches down below. The woman was lost in thought as she gazed into the distance where the night sky and the day sky intersected. Her orange-red eyes were as dazzling as the setting sun and as resplendent as the stars, captivating people. Sigh. The woman finally heaved a resigned sigh. What do you want me to do? The heavenly life goddess asked. The heavenly heaven god replied in a slow voice. Can't Lin absorb the powers of the heavenly gods? Let's give him the powers of the heavenly gods. Metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. I can sense that he's already gathered the powers of metal, water, fire, and earth, and he's only missing the wood element. Send him a wood element, heavenly god. The heavenly life goddess. By the way, remember to put on a more serious disguise. Don't let him know that we're delivering bento to him, the heavenly heaven god suddenly added. The heavenly life goddess was very exhausted, but she still nodded. West Sea Alliance. The immortal land above water moved to the edge of the West Sea. A colossal creature suddenly appeared at the edge of the continent, alarming many living beings on the continent. A towering pillar of water carrying a gargantuan continent was an extremely rare sight even in the boundless Tai Chu continent. Lin sat on a lounge chair, basking in the sun and enjoying the sea breeze as he enjoyed the seafood concocted by Lan Xiaoni. Big Boss Lin, how does it taste? Lan Xiaoni asked with an uneasy expression. These fish slices are fresh and smooth, fragrant and delicious. Every bit of moisture and freshness has been preserved, and every bit of excess impurities has been removed. It can be said to be perfect. Coupled with the extremely fragrant water emperor sauce, it's simply a top-notch pairing. Very delicious. Who would have thought that underling land's cooking would be so good? Unlin praised with a buoyant smile as he enjoyed the fish slices. A vibrant smile appeared on Lan Xiaoni's face upon receiving this praise, and her heart was filled with a sense of accomplishment. If you like it, I'll cook for you every day. Sure. Unlin enjoyed the seafood with elation. In terms of taste, this was probably the most delicious seafood he had ever tasted. The meat was tender and refreshing, and not only was it extremely delicious, it was never enough no matter how much he ate it. Lan Xiaoni supported her chin with one hand, and she used a wooden skewer to pick up the translucent fish slices before placing them into her delicate mouth and chewing them carefully. It's so delicious. Her eyes narrowed with enjoyment. For some reason, she felt like this was even more delicious than what she had cooked in the past. The two of them enjoyed the seafood, and before they knew it, another day had passed. The next day, Unlin had recovered to his peak condition. Big Boss Unlin, I want to explore the cave in the depths of the West Sea with you. Lan Xiaoni made her way over to him with a determined expression. Unlin's brows furrowed slightly. It's very dangerous there. Lan Xiaoni raised the divine seal on the back of her hand for Unlin to see with a smile. Don't forget that I'm also a heavenly god of water, so I'm more powerful than the average heavenly god. I won't be a burden to you. Besides, I'm also the leader of the West Sea Alliance, so I have a responsibility to eliminate all factors that are detrimental to the stability of the West Sea, Lan Xiaoni insisted. Unlin thought about it for a moment. There really weren't many enemies that could pose a threat to Lan Xiaoni, so she would be a great help if she stayed by his side, so he nodded in agreement. All right, but you have to promise me that if you encounter any perilous situations, don't engage in battle. You have to run away first, Unlin instructed. All right, I promise. Lan Xiaoni nodded without any hesitation. Thus, the two of them formed a team, and they traveled toward the cave in the depths of the West Sea. Along the way, Lan Xiaoni would toss a series of large bubbles into the air. According to her, this was a monitoring device specially used to detect enemies. Every bubble could monitor everything within a radius of 10,000 miles. Of course, these bubbles could only monitor the movements of the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army. They had 100 ways to evade detection from powerful heavenly gods. Otherwise, Lan Xiaoni wouldn't have been forced into a perilous situation. After flying for a while, the two of them finally caught sight of the cave in the distance. From afar, it looked as if a massive hole had suddenly appeared in the boundless blue ocean. A peculiar force field enshrouded the entire area, and even Unlin's divine sense was disrupted, let alone those with cultivation bases lower than his. The force field was chaotic and depraved, but it was also like the deep sea that could engulf all souls and consciousness. Anyone who approached the cave would feel as if they were sinking without end until even their consciousness dissipated, as if they had fallen into an eternal slumber. It could be said that living beings below the return to void stage wouldn't even be able to maintain their consciousness here. We sent out a total of 5 teams to investigate the cave, and the last team even had a return to void stage mighty figure who had attained the power of the divine Tao. However, all of them disappeared without a trace, without any exception. Lan Xiaoni spoke with a grave expression. Unlin nodded. Let's go. Let's see what's going on in there. Be careful and stay close behind me. Lan Xiaoni looked at the white-robed figure before her with a faint smile. All right, Big Boss Unlin. This force field was not enough to affect Unlin and Lan Xiaoni. The two of them arrived at the center of the massive cave. The cave spanned close to 500 kilometers, and it was extremely dark inside with no visible bottom. The only sound that could be heard was the incessant crashing of the ocean into the cave. It was quite a spectacular sight, but it was also quite terrifying, as if even the entire West Sea couldn't fill up this cave. They began to slowly descend to explore the mysteries of the cave. Chapter 1858. The two of them continued to plummet downward. Lan Xiaoni unleashed her golden water protection technique, which enshrouded her snowy white, supple skin in a semi-transparent armor. This armor was able to easily keep all types of energy at bay, and it was even able to easily keep out spiritual interference. Enlin couldn't even be bothered to unleash any defensive measures. After absorbing the essential Tao bone of the heavenly true immortal, his physical body had become extremely powerful. Even if he stood still and allowed a Tao integration stage super mighty figure to attack him, they might not be able to break through his skin. It could be said that his skin was his best defense. After descending for a while, the two of them were still unable to see the bottom. Even their divine sense was unable to reach the bottom. The light above them was becoming darker and darker due to the force field. This was once the joint burial ground of the high priests of the Spirit Fish clan and the Heavenly Turtle tribe, Shihaizi and Tianchenji. We should have already arrived at their burial ground by now, so why is there still nothing here? Lan Xiaoni was perplexed. Not only will the terrain be completely overturned, even the space itself will undergo peculiar changes. It's understandable that we can't see what's here. Enlin was not surprised. The two of them were only perplexed, but they weren't really fearful. Enlin was fearful because of his own power, while Lan Xiaoni was fearful because of Enlin's power. The two of them continued to descend. Within the cave, the sound of the surging ocean gradually disappeared. The light above also quickly dimmed. Everything was very, very quiet. This was clearly a cave without any water, but Enlin and Lan Xiaoni felt as if they were already submerged in water. This place is imbued with an extremely pure power of water. Lan Xiaoni waved a hand through the darkness, upon which ripples spread into infinity and beyond. Aside from that, there are other types of liquid flowing soundlessly here as well. The energy imbued within the floating oars is frighteningly high, and there are many creatures that I don't recognize lurking in the darkness, some of which are even giving me a sense of unease. Enlin looked around with a white light flashing in his eyes. It's very likely that we've already entered an unknown mystic realm. How could this be? Lan Xiaoni's expression shifted slightly. I can't sense any spatial fluctuations or spatial fluctuations. This proves that the other party's strength is enough to make us fall into its trap without anyone noticing. Although it's a trap set up in advance, it's still very frightening. Enlin sighed. The ocean. Lan Xiaoni's expression shifted. Enlin, the heavenly sea god has never appeared in this world, but that doesn't mean that he can't use his power to interfere with the Tai Chu continent. It will create a passage for us to fall into its territory. Then, everything will be easy. Since you know, why did you still come? A voice sounded from afar, and it carried a wisp of bewilderment. Lan Xiaoni's heart thumped violently upon hearing this voice, as if some extreme danger was approaching, and she couldn't help but draw closer to Enlin. I'm here to find answers, Enlin said as he stared at the dark bottom. An azure ball of light blossomed at the bottom. It first bloomed like a lotus and then spread to the endless darkness, turning the darkness into a boundless ocean of blue light. Boundless, spectacular, and spectacular. This was Enlin's first impression of the ocean. Countless golden crystals began to emerge from the ocean, emanating energy fluctuations that made even Enlin's heart palpitate. A blue water humanoid appeared at the center of the ocean. It had no facial features, and it looked as if it had been constructed in a very perfunctory manner. The only thing that was pleasing to the eye was that its body was very smooth and well-proportioned. Enlin, Lan Xiaoni, we meet again, the water humanoid said. I am the Heavenly Sea. Enlin and Lan Xiaoni had once met the Heavenly Sea God in a mystic realm outside of the Tai Chu continent. At that time, it was still quite wooden and quiet, far less human-like than it was now. Greetings, Heavenly Sea God. Lin smiled. Lan Xiaoni was a little scared. Hello, what scared the mermaid princess was not only the heavenly sea god's power, but also the fact that she had taken the heavenly sea god's power of water and used it to fight against the heavenly human tribe at the western heavenly gate. Lin was even more outrageous. He had taken the Starfire battleship given to him by the heavenly sea god, then turned around and bombarded the heavenly human tribe. He had even slain one of the heavenly sea god's most powerful generals. The two of them were feeling rather conflicted by this benevolent water humanoid. Why are you here? Aren't you afraid that I'll kill you? The heavenly sea god asked. Behind it, one golden crystal after another exploded to reveal the liquid within. Extreme energy fluctuations proliferated outward, and Lin knew that each and every drop of golden liquid here could unleash power far exceeding that of the Tao integration stage. Alright, so this water humanoid was not benevolent. Lan Xiaoni grumbled in her heart. Do you think we want to come here? We just want to investigate why this cave appeared in the West Sea. We don't want to see you. Lin waved his hands and tried to put on a friendly expression. Don't get worked up, brother. I know I did some things in the past, but that was all in self-defense. They wanted to kill me, and I fought back, only to accidentally kill them. The heavenly sea god remained silent. Lan Xiaoni swallowed nervously. Me too, the heavenly sea god. If that's all you came here to say, then there's no need. The heavenly sea god waved a hand through the air, and billions of golden crystals shattered at the same time. Boundless liquid hovered in the darkness, as if it were the stars in the night sky. Brother Sea, don't get worked up. Lin yelled, I actually came here to ask you a question. What is it? The heavenly sea god turned to Lin. I want to ask you why you thought I was one of you? Lin asked. This was a question that had been weighing on his heart for a long time. He didn't even have a heavenly god, so how could the heavenly sea god, one of the 6 paramount heavenly gods, think he was one of them? The heavenly sea god's hand faltered slightly, and he fell silent. When I first met you, I had thought that you were aware of your identity. However, it looks like you've lost consciousness due to the Purple Star incident. The heavenly sea god heaved a forlorn sigh. Other paramount heavenly gods may not recognize you, but I recognize you as we're best brothers. Lin's heart jolted upon hearing this. They really were King brothers? Then, who am I? Lin asked. The heavenly sea god slowly flew toward Lin. You are the heavenly darkness god, the ruler of the paramount heavenly Tao of darkness. You possess the ultimate power to engulf and restart everything. Lin stood rooted to the spot. He had already mentally prepared himself, and he had a rough idea of his own identity, but his mind still went completely blank when the heavenly sea god confirmed it himself. So I really am darkness. Chapter 1859. I'm clearly a human. I have parents who raised me, so how did I become the heavenly darkness god? Lin didn't know how to face this reality. If he really was a representative of the heavenly darkness god and wasn't a human, then how was he going to face his family and friends in the future? The paramount heavenly Tao that rules over darkness and possesses the ultimate power to engulf everything and restart everything? So bad *SS so cool. Lan Xiaoni's focus was not on this at all. Instead, she became even more excited upon hearing the heavenly sea god's words, and she grabbed onto Lin's hand. What's the point of being powerful? I'm not a human anymore. Lin spoke with difficulty. So what if you're not a human? I'm not a human either. Lan Xiaoni gripped tightly onto Lin's hand, as if she was trying to calm him down. There are countless beings that aren't human. Big Boss Lin, I don't care if you're a chicken, a dog, or a pig, Lan Xiaoni said with a firm expression. Lin's lips twitched. Can't you use a better analogy? Lan Xiaoni leaned her head against Lin's arm with a wide grin. No matter what your identity is, you'll always be my big boss. For some reason, Lin's heart stirred slightly upon hearing this. However, He was still quite confused and uneasy about his identity. I know what you're worried about. The heavenly sea god looked at Enlin with his eyeless head. Are you worried that you'll no longer be you after you become the heavenly darkness god? Enlin didn't deny the heavenly sea god's words and nodded lightly. The heavenly sea god splayed his hands open. You're Enlin, and you're also darkness. This has been your identity from the moment you were born. Otherwise, why do you think you possess the Tianming Dao physique? That's just a manifestation of the heavenly darkness god's power of darkness. Also, why do you think you're able to absorb the powers of the other heavenly gods? You're just using the devouring nature of darkness to your advantage. You're afraid of becoming the heavenly darkness god? What a joke. You were the heavenly darkness god from the very beginning. The heavenly sea god's words were like a bolt of lightning that completely jolted Enlin awake. That's right. Was there any point in worrying about what would happen if he became the heavenly darkness god? He was already the heavenly darkness god. Enlin looked at his palm and his eyes lit up. I don't need to worry about these problems at all. I've always been the heavenly darkness goddess, and I've been using the power of the heavenly darkness goddess from the very beginning. I'm glad that you understand this, Brother Darkness. A mouth suddenly appeared on the heavenly sea god's featureless face, and it slowly cracked open into what he thought was a benevolent smile. It's just like how I am the ocean. Although I am a part of the heavenly axiom and hold supreme authority, I have been me ever since I gained self-awareness. Even if the future changes, as long as myself does not disappear, I will not change. Lan Xiaoni felt like something was amiss as she listened to their friendly exchange. But the exchange continued. Then why don't I have a divine ring of darkness? Why can't I use all of my power of darkness? Enlin asked with a perplexed expression. That's because your power is incomplete, not complete. The heavenly sea god revealed everything that had happened all those years ago. The purple star's first step in destroying the heavens was to seize darkness. Only with darkness could they end everything and create a new heavenly Tao. Thankfully, they failed. However, unfortunately, darkness was also severely wounded, and its power of laws fell from the heavens. The power of laws that represented Tao was severely damaged, and it transformed into a life form that reincarnated into you. He looked at Enlin with a serious expression before continuing, There's also something peculiar within your body. I can't see through it, but it's repairing your power of darkness through various methods. Enlin's heart jolted upon hearing this. Could it be that the heavenly sea god was referring to was the system? The system was repairing the power of darkness? The heavenly sea god continued, Furthermore, I've carefully analyzed each and every one of your battles. As such, I also know that that thing can use a special method to forcefully draw upon the power of darkness within your body by overdrawing on something within you. Enlin fell silent upon hearing this. Lan Xiaoni immediately grew anxious upon hearing this, and she immediately asked in a panicked voice, What do you mean by forcefully drawing upon something within Big Boss Enlin's body? The heavenly sea god turned to Lan Xiaoni. Theoretically speaking, I'm your big boss, right? I only have one big boss, and that's Enlin. Lan Xiaoni clung onto Enlin's arm with a stubborn expression, refusing to bow down to evil. The heavenly sea god shook his head. Then your big boss should know what I mean by forcefully drawing upon the power of darkness. Lan Xiaoni turned to Enlin with concern etched on her face. It's fine. Enlin pinched Lan Xiaoni's soft cheeks with a comforting smile. It's just that my power will decrease a little every time I use my power of darkness. It's no big deal. Really? Lan Xiaoni was still very concerned. Her woman's sixth sense told her that things weren't as simple as they seemed. Really? Enlin looked directly into Lan Xiaoni's eyes. How can you not believe what Big Boss says? I believe you. I believe you, all right? Lan Xiaoni yielded. In reality, she would listen to anything Enlin said. Even if it was an extremely excessive request, she would still do it. This was the self-cultivation of a little brother. "Thank you for answering my questions, Brother C," Unlin said in a polite manner. "You're welcome. We're best friends." The heavenly sea god smiled and said, "You'll find out if you can continue to awaken some things." Unlin's lips twitched imperceptibly as he looked at the countless droplets of liquid exuding terrifying energy fluctuations behind the heavenly sea god. "Is this how you greet your best brother? Brother C, you've told me so much, so you must have something to say to me, right?" Unlin asked. If the heavenly sea god wanted to wage a war, there was no need for him to waste so much time explaining things to Unlin. "Brother Darkness knows me best." A smile appeared on the humanoid water creature's face, but it was actually a little horrifying. "Then let me have a heart-to-heart talk with you. Light and Earth want to destroy the human race and unleash divine wrath in order to eliminate this threat. Life and the heavens want to destroy all living beings on the Tai Chu continent in order to establish a new cycle of life and create new life. I actually don't agree with what they're doing." Unlin and Lan Xiaoni's expressions both shifted upon hearing this, as if they had heard something unbelievable. They stared intently at the heavenly sea god, trying to determine whether or not he was telling the truth. "All of the heavenly gods and all of the living beings in this world think that I'm on the side of destroying the human race, but they're all wrong. That's all fake. I'm just putting on a show for them." Chapter 1860. "You're putting on a show for us?" Unlin was astonished. Never would he have thought that he would hear something like this from the heavenly sea god. "Are you kidding me? You even lied to the other heavenly gods?" Unlin felt like this was absurd. "I'm not lying to you. I can swear to the heavens," the heavenly sea god said with a solemn expression. Unlin was speechless. "You're the King Heavens? Swearing to yourself isn't convincing at all." The heavenly sea god continued, "The heavenly gods think that I haven't appeared in this world for so long because I acted too early and was restricted by the Tai Chu continent, but in reality, I could have descended to the Tai Chu continent a long time ago. You could have descended to the Tai Chu continent a long time ago, so why are you still here?" Unlin was perplexed. The heavenly sea god turned to Lan Xiaoni. "Why do you think I created this passageway and only retrieved Lan Xiaoni's heavenly water power after the passageway appeared?" Unlin's expression shifted slightly. The heavenly sea god looked at Unlin with a serious expression. "That's right, it's all because of you. Otherwise, how could you have coincidentally encountered 3 heavenly gods attacking Lan Xiaoni as soon as you arrived at the West Sea Alliance? I put on a show for the other paramount heavenly gods. In order to prevent them from suspecting me, I even abandoned the heavenly weather god in order to create the impression that there was a vendetta between us. Unlin, everything I've done is to draw you to me. This is the only place where we can speak freely without being detected by the other 4 paramount heavenly gods." The heavenly sea god spread open his arms, and his heroic spirit made the entire boundless ocean surge and churn. "So what did you do to lure me here, just to say something to me?" Unlin was a little panicked. What was this heavenly sea god trying to do? "Don't you think destroying the human race or all living beings on the Tai Chu continent is very stupid?" the heavenly sea god asked with a faint smile. "That's right, it's extremely stupid." Unlin nodded. "Then we can agree that their actions are indeed extremely stupid." The heavenly sea god nodded in agreement. Unlin and Lan Xiaoni were both a little dumbstruck. What the heavenly sea god said next shocked them even more. "Darkness, join my side. Let's destroy light, earth, life, and sky together. After that, let me rule the heavenly Tao." The heavenly sea god spoke with a smile. Lan Xiaoni was completely dumbstruck. Unlin drew a sharp intake of breath. The heavenly sea god spoke in a slow voice. "This world is wrong, or rather, the subconscious will of the heavenly Tao is wrong. It thought that releasing the authorities of the heavenly Tao and letting them manage this world with the thinking of living beings would be better. But look at you now. Didn't the 4 Empyrean gods still have a disagreement? Life and sky even wanted to kill light and earth. Unlin's mouth twitched slightly. He thought to himself, how is it just the four utmost beings having differences? You're the one who wants to King get rid of the other four. And you're even acting so cute. This world doesn't need too many voices, and it doesn't need so many retards. It only needs one intelligent being to manage it. That's right, only by unifying the world can we achieve stability and avoid conflict. Focus all of your power and faith on me, and I will end all conflict and lead the entire world toward a better future, the heavenly sea god said. Darkness, my best friend, I need your support. Don't you want to get rid of your status as a representative of the heavenly Tao? In exchange, at the final step, I will use all of my power to separate the darkness authority from your life essence. You will retain your own power and continue to live happily ever after as a human. Exterminate the human race and all living beings on the Tai Chu continent? That's all bullsh*t. We just need to maintain the status quo, and the continent will be able to develop as normal. Brother Darkness, what do you think? Unlin and Lan Xiaoni were both dumbstruck by the heavenly sea god's words. This B***starred was the most ambitious they had ever seen. The heavenly sea god didn't care about killing all of the living beings on the Tai Chu continent. All he wanted to do was kill all of the heavenly gods and use his own will to rule over the entire heavenly Tao. Never would they have thought. The heavenly sea god was the biggest boss. He was already a paramount heavenly god, but he still wasn't satisfied. He wanted to be the only paramount heavenly god. He was a traitor to all of the heavenly gods. The heavenly sea god had initially said that it was a mistake for the heavenly Tao to give birth to a will of the heavenly gods to regulate the development of the Tai Chu continent, but Enlin wasn't quite convinced. However, after hearing the heavenly sea god's words, he was starting to believe it. Brother C, how can you guarantee that you won't attack the human race or any other living beings on the Tai Chu continent after you succeed? How can you guarantee that you'll carry out everything you've said? Enlin asked. That's simple. If I want to become the only being in the paramount heavenly Tao with a will of its own, then I have to fuse with the realm core. I can swear a vow to the realm core to carry out everything I've just said. If I go back on my word, then the realm core will fuse with all of the powers in this world to destroy me, the heavenly sea god said. Enlin paused momentarily before nodding in agreement. The heavenly sea god's words were indeed a good idea. Brother Darkness, can you help me now? The heavenly sea god asked. Enlin didn't completely believe the heavenly sea god's words, but this was indeed a very good idea, and he had no reason to refuse. The heavenly sea god needed his power, and he also needed the heavenly sea god's power. All right, tell me how I can help you, Enlin asked. The heavenly sea god plunged a hand into his own heart and slowly pulled out a prismatic crystal that was about the size of a thumb. This is my heart clone. Refine it and wear it on your body. When the time comes, we'll be able to communicate with each other without being discovered. That's a good thing. A satisfied smile appeared on Enlin's face. Of course it's a good thing. The main reason I lured you here was to avoid the heavenly heaven god's detection and give this to you, the heavenly sea god said. The two of them conversed harmoniously for a while longer. It's time for you to go back. If you stay here for too long, the other paramount heavenly gods will become suspicious. We'll talk about the details after I descend upon the Tai Chu continent. You can continue to develop as you see fit, the heavenly sea god said. All right, I'm going now. Enlin flew into the sky with Lan Xiaoni in tow. Wait, there's still something you haven't taken with you, the heavenly sea god said. What is it? Enlin was perplexed. Of course it's. The heavenly sea god smiled as he raised his hand. Countless specks of golden liquid began to tremor at the same time before unleashing an extremely terrifying might toward Enlin. Why haven't you taken my attack package yet? Chapter 1861. This was the first time that Enlin had faced an attack from a paramount heavenly god. Countless droplets of golden liquid hurtled toward him, each of which was imbued with the power to shatter mountains and split seas. F***CK. Are you serious? Enlin could sense a power that made his flesh crawl from the billions of droplets of golden liquid. There was even a wisp of his opponent's power of the heavenly gods within them. A divine halo of mountains instantly materialized above his head, and a suit of armor as thick and heavy as Mount Bujo appeared over his body. At the same time, the powers of wind, lightning, metal, fire, and earth transformed into Tao jades that revolved around him, creating 6 layers of heavenly god defenses. Bam bam bam! One droplet of golden liquid after another crashed into Enlin's multiple layers of heavenly god defenses, upon which explosive booms erupted. Enlin could sense that the golden liquid was imbued with absolute power that could seep through all things. The power of laws transcended beyond normal essential laws, and it was as if all laws had to yield to it. He could see that the golden liquid possessed a natural ability to suppress all other powers of the heavenly god. This power was eternal and indestructible, and it crashed relentlessly into Enlin's 6 layers of heavenly god defenses, puncturing all of them. Some of the liquid only managed to puncture 3 or 4 layers, while others punctured all 6 layers and punctured his body as well. The power of water that Lan Xiaoni had unleashed was like a lackey meeting its true boss. She couldn't even keep a single drop of her boss liquid at bay, and the barrier of water she had unleashed was completely ineffective. Her slender waist, fishtail, and even her chest and head were all punctured by the liquid, and she almost burst into tears from the excruciating pain. Run! Run as fast as you can! Enlin grabbed onto Lan Xiaoni's hand as he unleashed all of his power to flee into the distance. Lan Xiaoni looked at the countless droplets of golden liquid behind her. If all of them were to fall upon her, she would definitely be reduced to a hornet's nest, and she immediately flailed her fishtail frantically as she fled for her life. The golden liquid was still raining down upon them. They felt as if they were traversing through a hail of bullets, and their lives were hanging by a thread. Their only thought was to escape from this accursed place. They ran for what seemed like an eternity. The sound of the golden liquid gradually faded. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The majestic roar of the sea falling into the cave was heard. Huff huff huff. Big Boss Enlin, we're finally back. Lan Xiaoni's body was riddled with wounds, but there was a smile of relief on her face. It really wasn't easy to escape from the heavenly sea god. Its attacks are simply too unstoppable, and my defenses are completely unable to block them. Enlin also heaved a long sigh of relief before swallowing an immortal pill and gifting one to Lan Xiaoni. The two of them flew out of the huge hole, their expressions somewhat tired and dispirited. They could sense that there were still residual fluctuations of the heavenly sea god's power within their bodies. That vast and mighty power was still wreaking havoc in their wounds. A few of them even hit their vitals. If it weren't for their strong vitality and quick escape, they might have really died there. Looks like I'm not powerful enough to oppose a paramount heavenly god. Enlin heaved a faint sigh. He didn't think that he would still be unable to resist the power of the heavenly god even though he already possessed 6 heavenly god. It was as if they were on completely different levels. What the hell are you so proud of? I'm sure Big Boss Enlin will be more powerful than him in the future. Then, I'll crush him into the ground with all my might. Lan Xiaoni pouted with an indignant expression. The two of them returned to the West Sea Alliance while recovering from their injuries. The residual power of the paramount heavenly god of the sea was extremely terrifying. Each and every drop of golden liquid was imbued with power as vast and boundless as an ocean. Even Enlin had to expend a lot of energy to get rid of it, let alone Lan Xiaoni, who was still being tortured by the power of the sea. The heavenly sea god was truly willing to do anything in order to put on a convincing act. He was so cruel to his teammates. This was the only thought in their minds at this moment. Of course, they weren't going to tell anyone about the heavenly sea god. Even though they were just the two of them right now, they had a tacit understanding not to talk about it, and they viewed the heavenly sea god as an enemy. The heavenly sea god was going to descend in 3 months. Everything could wait until it descended. Lan Xiaoni had already decided to stay at the West Sea Alliance headquarters and engage in friendly battles with the heavenly human tribe from time to time. Enlin was also planning to return to his sect and become a quiet, handsome man. Just as the two of them were about to stay put, they suddenly discovered that something was amiss in the distance. A man with a dark green halo above his head was currently vomiting something into the ocean. The ocean within a radius of 2,500 kilometers had been plunged into an inky black expanse. Countless sea creatures were dying, and even the most powerful sea monsters were floating on the ocean with their bellies exposed. The man continued to vomit, and a black substance poured out of his mouth. The ocean within a radius of 2,500 kilometers had been stained black, but the actual area of the ocean that had been contaminated had most likely already extended for tens of thousands of kilometers. Furthermore, it was still continuing to spread, and countless living beings had perished. I can sense that this is a heavenly god? My god, what the hell is he vomiting? Why is he vomiting so much? Enlin was astonished. Lan Xiaoni couldn't sit still any longer. How dare this be *starred poison the ocean? Enlin had only heard of sinister people who poisoned water. This was the first time he had seen a powerful being who would poison the ocean. It's everyone's responsibility to protect the environment. Let's go kill him. Enlin was very enraged. He didn't know what this *starred was plotting, but it was definitely not a small plot, so he had to kill him in the cradle. Alright. Lan Xiaoni immediately unleashed her power of the heavenly gods and flew toward the vomiting heavenly god. Enlin also activated his 6 divine halos and flew toward the vomiting heavenly god. The vomiting heavenly god sensed the energy fluctuations in the distance, and he raised his head to discover a beautiful mermaid, as well as a man with a crimson divine halo above his head and 5 peculiar little balls revolving around his body. Holy F***ck. Why is Enlin here? The heavenly god was dumbstruck. He immediately fled after ascertaining that this was someone that he couldn't afford to mess with. He was the heavenly poison god under the heavenly life god's command, and he had been sent here to poison the West Sea in order to monitor the entire West Sea. In other words, he was only here to scout out the West Sea Alliance and the heavenly human tribe. He had thought that even if he encountered the West Sea Alliance leader, Lan Xiaoni, he would still be able to escape unscathed. Who would have thought that he would encounter such a terrifying being after only 1 hour of vomiting? Run, run, run. The heavenly poison god transformed into a cloud of poison mist and fled with all his might. You're not getting away. Enlin and Lan Xiaoni chased after him relentlessly. The heavenly poison god ran even faster. He knew that he had been poisoned, but he shouldn't have been this unlucky, right? He had encountered this god of slaughter on a mission? Chapter 1862. You want to get away after polluting the environment? Do you really think I'm a pushover? A clear roar sounded from behind the heavenly poison god. The surrounding ocean suddenly roared violently as massive waves surged into the heavens. A massive wave over 100,000 feet in length swept through the air, creating a massive wall of water that obscured the entire sky before crashing down upon the heavenly poison god with unimaginable force. The heavenly poison god's expression shifted, and a divine light erupted from the dark green divine halo above his head. Water-thirsty poisonous wasp! He roared. Erg! A small, sticky wasp suddenly shot forth from his mouth. Enlin and Lan Xiaoni were both struck by a sense of discomfort upon seeing this. Even though the technique was a little disgusting, it was very powerful. A black, sticky wasp with extremely powerful engulfment abilities crashed into the massive wall of water imbued with the power of the heavenly gods and was able to quickly chew a massive hole through it. The heavenly poison god escaped from the hole and continued onward. Boom! Suddenly, the void behind him exploded. Scorching temperatures struck the heavenly poison god with unbearable heat. An extremely terrifying aura was rapidly approaching him, and his heart thumped violently. 7 Holy Flame Mode, Violent Advance. Flames capable of incinerating the sky and boiling the ocean erupted from Enlin's feet, leaving a trail of flames in his wake. His speed was close to 1/5 faster than the heavenly poison god's, and he caught up to the heavenly poison god in less than a minute. The heavenly poison god's back had already been scorched red by the flames. Enlin's voice, which sent chills down the heavenly poison god's spine, sounded from behind him. Look what I've just seen, a lone heavenly god, countless holy flames imbued with the paramount power of laws swept forth at the same time. The ocean within a radius of several dozen kilometers was instantly incinerated into nothingness. Not even water vapor was released before it was reduced to the most microscopic particles. The heavenly poison god let loose a blood-curdling wail as his bottom melted. Enlin, you've gone too far. The heavenly poison god roared, heavenly ghost demonic poison. Ugh! He opened his mouth and violently vomited. He spat out a sticky and hideous monster from his mouth. It expanded with the wind and instantly grew to 1,000 feet in size. It stretched out its sharp claws and pounced on Enlin. That sticky body was not afraid of fire, and there were densely packed things wriggling like worms on its body. It was those little things that swallowed the fire. How disgusting! But do you think this is enough to restrain me? Enlin suppressed his disgust. The golden lightning jade at his side began to shine brightly. This thing of yours isn't afraid of fire, but I don't believe that you aren't afraid of other attributes either. Rumble! Suddenly, thunder roared, lighting up heaven and earth, destroying everything. Like a sharp sword, the golden lightning pierced through the evil spirit's body. Lightning techniques were of the purest yang attribute and were most adept at banishing evil spirit. Sure enough, the evil spirits didn't even last a second before they were instantly destroyed by Enlin's golden void lightning. The heavenly poison god's heart jolted with shock, and he unleashed another heavenly god spell technique. Look at this, heavenly realm poison flower. Erg! He threw up again, and this time, he spat out a peculiar flower bud. The flower bud quickly rotated and expanded before blossoming, upon which countless colorful pollen particles proliferated through the air. The pollen particles were immune to fire and lightning, and they scattered through the air. Even the space around them was twisted and warped by their powerful toxicity, instantly transforming the surrounding area into a lethal poison realm. Enlin, my poison powder is extremely resilient, and it's immune to fire and lightning. What are you going to do about it? The heavenly poison god looked behind him as he fled. All of a sudden, the ocean surged, and billions of tons of seawater flew into the sky before crashing down toward the center of the ocean like a gargantuan hand. The center of the ocean was where the heavenly poison god was situated. What? The heavenly poison god let loose a cry of surprise as he was swept into the ocean by the seawater. Hee, you were so engrossed in the fight that you forgot about me? Lan Xiaoni swished her fishtail as she swept the poison powder into the ocean. The poison powder was immune to fire and lightning, but that didn't mean it could withstand the power of the paramount essential water. The heavenly poison god struggled at the bottom of the ocean, and at this moment, a bolt of golden void lightning pierced through the ocean at an extremely fast speed before striking his chest and blasting a bloody hole into his chest. No, he had to get away. The heavenly poison god clasped a hand over his chest and refused to fly into the sky. Instead, he swam toward the ocean and even threw up a mouthful of poison, dyeing the entire ocean black. Air escape didn't work, so he used water escape. If Enlin had to chase after him, he would have to divert some of his attention to defend against the poisonous seawater. I'm so pissed off. Is this B** starred a cuttlefish? He's polluting the West Sea with his black breath again. Lan Xiaoni was enraged upon seeing this. Weather, extreme frost domain. Enlin stomped his foot down toward the ocean, and the power of frost froze the ocean within a radius of over 500 kilometers. The heavenly poison god was swimming in the ocean when it suddenly froze, crack, crack, crack. He moved through the ice, and he felt as if he had become an ice-breaking submarine as his speed rapidly plummeted. At this moment, Lan Xiaoni had already unleashed her heavenly water power to transform the ice that Enlin had congealed into ice swords, which she then stabbed into the heavenly poison god a few dozen times, inflicting wounds all over his body. Ow ow ow. Erg. The heavenly poison god vomited again. This time, it spat out a series of black vines, all of which were imbued with an unimaginably potent poison. The vines instantly melted away the surrounding ice before rising into the sky toward Enlin and Lan Xiaoni. Oh? You're not running anymore? Very good. You can finally fight me like a man. Enlin's eyes lit up as a suit of flame armor constructed from 7 holy flames enshrouded his body, exuding boundless scorching heat. The oncoming vines hadn't even gotten a chance to touch Enlin before they were melted by the extreme temperatures. Lan Xiaoni's body was extremely agile, and she quickly evaded the oncoming vines with her fishtail. Her jade-like hands danced through the air at an extremely fast speed, unleashing a series of extremely sharp water blades that sliced the vines into shreds. You think you can attack both of us at the same time? You've probably lost your mind. Enlin shook his head silently. Ah! The heavenly poison god suddenly let loose an almighty roar at Enlin. Crack! The divine halo above his head suddenly cracked open. Before Enlin had a chance to figure out what was happening, the chest area of his flaming armor turned inky black before melting away. An invisible power instantly pierced through the armor before stabbing viciously into his chest. Immediately afterward, a burst of invisible power caused his flesh to rot and his vitality to quickly drain away. Is this poison? An invisible and colorless poison? Enlin's expression shifted drastically as he hurriedly repressed the poison within his body. It was quite clear that the heavenly poison god had unleashed a technique that was beyond the limits of what he could handle, resulting in a backlash from the heavenly Tao. Ha ha! Enlin. So what if you're powerful? You've still been poisoned by Grandpa. Grandpa is going to go now. See you again. The heavenly poison god was extremely elated, and he took advantage of the instant that Enlin repressed the poison within his body to quickly flee. Chapter 1863. Even though the heavenly poison god was in quite a sorry state, he was very elated. Being able to escape unscathed from Enlin and Lan Xiaoni's pursuit was definitely a very rare feat among heavenly gods. He would be able to brag about this to all of the other heavenly gods for a long time. He might even be blessed by the beautiful goddess of life. The heavenly poison god's heart throbbed at the thought of the goddess of life. What a perfect authority that even gods yearned for. Die! Pucci! The golden water sword suddenly pierced through his body. Lan Xiaoni had already appeared behind the heavenly poison god, and the golden water sword in her hand had punctured the heavenly poison god's chest as blood stained the golden water sword red. The heavenly poison god's eyes widened. When did you? How dare you injure Big Boss Enlin? Die! Lan Xiaoni roared with rage in her eyes. Rip! The gold water sword suddenly melted and fused into his blood through his wounds. Then, it began to destroy his body's tissues. The heavenly poison god let loose a blood-curdling howl as cracks began to appear all over the divine halo above his head. Lan Xiaoni possesses the power of the heavenly god of water. She has the ability to transform her body into water and merge with the ocean, thereby allowing her to instantly teleport over short distances. You're a heavenly god, yet you don't even know this? Unlin flew over from afar with a disdainful expression. He had already stabbed himself with his evil-slaying sword and successfully purged the poison from his body. The heavenly poison god was forced into dire straits again, and Lan Xiaoni's power of water was still wreaking havoc within his body. He glowered at the high and mighty Enlin with a sinister expression. Enlin, you've forced my hand. I'm going to skin you alive even if I die this time. You! Enlin sneered. He spread his hands open, and the demonic star Holy Flame, Great Sun Holy Flame, Heavenly Void Holy Flame, Setting Moon Holy Flame, Blood Phoenix Holy Flame, Golden Dragon Holy Flame, and Vermilion Bird Holy Flame appeared at the same time to surround the heavenly poison god. Enhanced by the power of the heavenly fire god, this type of holy flame was extremely pure, and it was imbued with the paramount power of laws that could incinerate all things. As soon as it appeared, the ocean in a radius of over 500 kilometers began to boil and boil. The heavenly poison god felt as if he had been sandwiched between 7 massive suns, and his entire body was scorching crimson. Very good. Watch me break your holy flame. A deranged expression appeared on the heavenly poison god's face as he unleashed bursts of poisonous mist around his body. Enlin waved a hand through the air, and a dozen or so destructive wind blade tornadoes appeared again, all of which were imbued with the power of the heavenly god realm. The heavenly poison god's expression shifted. Very good. Watch me break your holy flames and tornado. Enlin waved a hand through the air, and a Kirin constructed from golden void lightning tore through space before descending upon this world. It was imbued with the power of the heavenly gods, and the space within a radius of over 50 kilometers cracked under the immense pressure. The heavenly poison god's face turned deathly pale. Enlin, don't think that I'm afraid of you just because you have a lot of powers of the heavenly gods. Watch as I destroy your holy flame, tornado, and lightning Kirin. Enlin snapped his fingers, and countless crimson metal blades appeared in the sky, emanating waves of cold light that seemed to be able to slash through everything in the world. He snapped his fingers again, and the projection of a gargantuan Mount Buzhou projection, imbued with boundless might, appeared at the highest point in the sky before accumulating power and crashing down upon the heavenly poison god. At the same time, over 100 destructive phenomena appeared, threatening to fall upon the heavenly poison god at any moment. Enlin looked at the heavenly poison god, who was at the center of countless terrifying spell techniques, and he spoke in an indifferent voice. Come on, let's see what you're going to use to skin me alive, the heavenly poison god. The heavenly poison god was suddenly struck by his own weakness and helplessness. This was a feeling of being completely crushed. All of the heavenly Tao techniques that Enlin had unleashed now possessed power that rivaled his own. There were a total of 6 heavenly Tao techniques of this caliber, and with so many powers stacked on top of one another, how was he supposed to fight them? At this moment, the 7 holy flames began to surge forth, the wind blade tornadoes, the crimson sword blades, the lightning Kirin, and the gargantuan mountain fell one after another. In that instant, it was as if doomsday had arrived. I'm going to kill you. Erg! The heavenly poison god roared in despair as he unleashed his most powerful vomiting technique, and at the same time, he unleashed his most powerful poison mist. The dark green poison mist blossomed with indignation as it tried to kill all of the oncoming attacks, but it was only able to last for a short while before it was engulfed by boundless energy. The heavenly poison god also perished amid his indignation and despair. The energy dissipated. The ocean within a radius of several hundred kilometers caved in. The seawater flowed backward to form a massive vortex. The heavenly poison god's body had already crumbled into specks of light that disappeared into thin air. Enlin was panting slightly. Unleashing all of his heavenly god powers at once was extremely taxing on his energy. However, it was all worth it to be able to kill a heavenly god. Immediately afterward, the system in his mind suddenly chimed. Ding dong! Congratulations on breaking through to the 4th stage of the evergreen technique. Congratulations on breaking through to the 5th stage of the evergreen technique. Congratulations on breaking through to the 6th stage of the evergreen technique. Congratulations on breaking through to the 9th stage of the evergreen technique. Host. Your wood type cultivation method, source of life, has been perfected. You have obtained the power of poison. A vast amount of information surged into his mind. Extremely profound true intent, as well as paramount powers of the heavenly gods, also surged into Enlin's mind at the same time, much to Enlin's surprise and elation. What a pleasant surprise! Never would he have thought that the heavenly god he was about to kill would be related to the wood type. However, thinking about it, most poisons were related to plants, and the heavenly poison god had released poisonous flowers and poisonous vines, so all of these were indeed related to the power of the wood element. Enlin couldn't help but burst into laughter. He was just thinking about how to find a wood-type heavenly god when the heavenly poison god appeared before him and threw up right in front of him, a pillow delivered to him when he was feeling sleepy. All of his 5 elemental cultivation methods had been perfected, and it was time for his body of the war god to reach the phenomenal success stage. Enlin became more and more excited as he thought about this. The power of poison had already completely fused into his body. His excitement was gradually repressed as a peculiar expression appeared on his face. This power of poison, it was a little disgusting. Enlin was astonished to discover that the power of poison had to be unleashed through vomiting. All of its techniques required the use of one's mouth. No wonder the heavenly poison god kept throwing up. So this was how the power of the heavenly gods was supposed to be used? Enlin had initially thought that this was some sort of special hobby. Just the thought of throwing up balls of sticky, stinky stuff made Enlin feel a little nauseous. This was probably the most disgusting power of poison he had ever obtained. A disdainful expression appeared on Enlin's face as he murmured to himself, "Sigh. So be it. I'll just pretend like I never had this power of poison. I won't use it no matter what. The only purpose of its existence is to allow my evergreen technique to be perfected." Chapter 1864. Within the central region of the Tai Chu continent, within the white nectar sea, on a towering divine tree, a woman with long green hair turned toward the west. That disgusting B** starred is already dead, the woman murmured. As the heavenly life goddess, shouldn't you view all living beings as equals? Why do you despise the heavenly poison god so much? A pale head appeared in the sky. Despise the heavenly poison god? No. The heavenly life goddess fiddled with the flowers before her as her orange eyes reflected the final scenes of the heavenly poison god's death. All things are beautiful, and he can also be very beautiful. It's just that I just so happen to have chosen him, that's all. The heavenly heaven god fell silent. Just a moment ago, you were calling him disgusting, and now you're saying all things are beautiful? The heavenly life goddess looked up into the sky. I've done what I had to do. How is Enlin? Did we succeed? The heavenly heaven god nodded. He's currently undergoing a transformation. The beautiful lips of the woman curled up, revealing a soul-stirring smile. I'm truly filled with anticipation. How far will he grow? For him, I've even sacrificed a heavenly deity. I hope he won't disappoint me. Meanwhile, within the West Sea, the sea within a radius of over 1,000,000 kilometers surged incessantly, as if some extremely terrifying power was descending. Golden, green, blue, crimson, yellow. 5-colored essential power fell from the heavens like vital energy, piercing through the heavens before descending into the West Sea and converging on a single point. That point was none other than Enlin's body. Enlin had already completed a hellish system mission and perfected his 5 elemental cultivation method, thereby allowing him to attain phenomenal success in his body of the war god. Lan Xiaoni could sense the changes in Enlin's body, and she immediately stood guard for him. Vital energy surged violently within a radius of hundreds of thousands of kilometers. Lan Xiaoni had never seen a phenomenon of this scale before, and it was even more ridiculous than a breakthrough to the Tao integration stage. The essential power of the 5 elements flowed relentlessly into Enlin's body from beyond the heavens, transforming his body and making it even more powerful and fearsome. "Won't you explode after eating so much energy at once?" Lan Xiaoni stared at Enlin with incredulity in her eyes. She saw Enlin devouring everything around him without restraint. The 5 elemental essences, vital energy, all the energy in the air. He was devouring everything that he could. At the same time, Enlin's body kept expanding. His muscles became thicker and bigger, and his height grew from 1.8 meters to 2 meters, 3 meters, 5 meters, 10 meters, 100 meters, 1,000 meters. He was still devouring energy to his heart's content. His body couldn't hold it all, so he expanded his body. He was going to devour anyway. Not only that, but his body was also flowing with extremely dense 5 elemental energy. Even his skin was surging with 5 different colors of 5 elemental energy, making him look like a colorful giant. Big Boss Enlin has become so big. Lan Xiaoni's eyes widened as she stared blankly at Enlin, who had suddenly become several kilometers tall. Is he going to be this big from now on? How am I going to hug him in the future? Enlin had now become the real Enlin giant. Lan Xiaoni could sense that Enlin's body was filled with extremely pure 5 elemental energy, and there was no way for him to compress it any further. As such, he could only move around with his massive body. Just as these thoughts were running through Lan Xiaoni's mind, a sudden turn of events unfolded. The energy within Enlin's body was being compressed relentlessly in a way that she couldn't comprehend. How is this energy being condensed and compressed? Lan Xiaoni was at a complete loss. She had used her heavenly water power to analyze the water-type energy within Enlin's body. As a result, she discovered that the water-type energy within Enlin's body was fusing with the other 5 elemental energy in a peculiar way, thereby creating a new type of energy that she had never seen before. It was just like when 5 balls of different colors collided with each other in a special way, they would eventually become a new kind of ball, and the 5 volumes would become 1 unit of volume. In the end, this new energy fused into Enlin's organs, Enlin's blood and meridians, and Enlin's consciousness. Lan Xiaoni had a feeling that this new energy could easily destroy a Tao integration stage super mighty figure if it were to erupt. This was an energy that was beyond her comprehension. She didn't know how Enlin's body was able to absorb this new energy without any scruples, nor did she dare to ask. All Lan Xiaoni could do was silently observe Enlin's performance. As the new energy continued to fuse into his body, Enlin's body also slowly shrank. He transformed from a giant of several kilometers to a handsome young man who was 1.8 meters tall. Lan Xiaoni swallowed nervously. She knew that even though Enlin had shrunk, he hadn't become weaker. Instead, he had become more powerful and terrifying. The energy that had expanded Enlin to several kilometers hadn't disappeared. Instead, it had perfectly fused into Enlin's body, and Enlin had reached a whole new realm. A golden ring appeared behind Enlin, and it was rotating relentlessly. 5 divine seals appeared in 5 different directions around the ring, all of which exuded a terrifying divine light. Most importantly, these divine seals revolved in a specific trajectory before converging at the center of the ring to form a small black vortex. Lan Xiaoni was struck by a sense of dizziness just by looking at the small black vortex, as if her entire being was going to be engulfed by the vortex. Enlin clenched his fist before throwing a gentle punch forward. The golden ring behind him tremored slightly. Bam! Heaven and earth transformed. A resounding boom shook heaven and earth. Boundless power instantly flattened and twisted the space up ahead. The boundless ocean was suddenly pierced through by an unstoppable power, extending for an extremely long distance. 5 kilometers, 50 kilometers, 50 kilometers, 500 kilometers, 1,000 kilometers, 1,500 kilometers. Lan Xiaoni's mouth gaped open once again upon seeing this. That's insane. She murmured to herself. Was this the effect of a normal attack? Even if she unleashed her full power, she wouldn't be able to do this. The divine halo behind Enlin slowly disappeared, and he heaved a light sigh of relief as a smile of elation appeared on his face. After attaining phenomenal success in the body of the war god, not only have my body and consciousness been elevated to new levels, but I've also attained the 5-elemental body, which is the ultimate form. The Fire Sage mode uses the 7 holy flames to activate my body and unleash my latent potential. Meanwhile, the 5-elemental body uses the Wings of True Fire, Divine Weapon Origin Energy, Earth Lotus Supreme Skill, Divine Liquid Fortune, Evergreen Technique. All 5 elemental powers combine to unleash my body's latent potential to an unimaginable level. If the Fire Sage mode was 1, then the 5-elemental body would be 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 greater than 5. As for how powerful it would be, even Enlin wasn't sure. This feeling, Enlin could sense the boundless power surging through his body, and he sighed with emotion. This is the feeling of invincibility. Chapter 1865. Congratulations, Big Boss Enlin, you've mastered a divine cultivation method. Lan Xiaoni made her way over to Enlin with a slightly uneasy expression, but she still squeezed Enlin's arm as her bright blue eyes blinked with curiosity. My God, it feels just as good as before. A smile appeared on Enlin's face upon hearing this. Even though I don't look any different on the surface, even if a Tao integration stage super mighty figure were to lay on the ground and pummel me for an entire day, they still wouldn't be able to break through my skin. Lan Xiaoni's expression shifted. It's that powerful? One had to realize that some bad *SS Tao integration stage super mighty figures could even pulverize immortal tools if they unleashed their full power of the divine Tao. Did that mean that Enlin's skin was even tougher than an immortal tool? Enlin and Lan Xiaoni rested for a while before flying toward the West Sea Alliance. The phenomena between heaven and earth had already disappeared. However, this had shocked the entire West Sea. All of the living beings in the West Sea could see the 5-elemental power descending from the sky no matter where they were. They were multicolored and resplendent, and they were like waterfalls that descended into the mortal world. Their Tao was profound, and they were grand and magnificent like a miracle. All of the West Sea Alliance powerful beings almost thought that the heavenly sea god had descended upon this world, and all of them were in a state of panic. Enlin and Lan Xiaoni returned to the West Sea Alliance, and everyone came to a sudden realization after hearing their explanation. Congratulations on sect leader Enlin's miraculous cultivation technique. As expected of the West Sea's Light of Hope, he's even more badass than the heavenly human tribe. I'm in awe of him. What kind of cultivation method did Senior Enlin cultivate to such a powerful phenomenon between heaven and earth? All of the mighty figures were offering congratulations and discussing spiritedly among themselves. A Spirit Fish clan general approached Enlin with a curious expression and asked him what cultivation method he had cultivated. Enlin replied with a serious expression, "The cultivation method I cultivated is extremely powerful. It's called the Boundless Heaven and Earth Mysterious Dark Power Creates Miracles, Yin-Yang 5-Elemental Combination Creation Technique." Gasp! Everyone drew a sharp intake of breath upon hearing this. Just the name of this cultivation method alone was enough to tell that it was extremely powerful. What followed was another round of enthusiastic flattery and praise. Enlin had long developed a resistance to this kind of compliment. He had cultivated his character to be indifferent to both praise and humility, so he responded very humbly and politely. High Priest Guyu asked, "By the way, sect leader Enlin, Did you and Alliance Leader Lon manage to discover anything during your investigation of the peculiar sea cave in the depths of the West Sea? What a great harvest! Lon Xiaoni continued. We discovered the heavenly sea god inside the cave, and we engaged in a fierce battle with him. As soon as these words were spoken, it caused another uproar in the hall. My God! Battle the heavenly sea god! Impressive! He was able to escape unscathed after battling the heavenly sea god? Doesn't this mean that our sect leader Unlin and Alliance leader Lon are already comparable to paramount heavenly gods? 50-50. That's not all. After the great battle, sect leader Unlin gained some enlightenment and achieved another breakthrough. So you're saying that sect leader Unlin is probably even more powerful than the heavenly sea god now? All of the West Sea mighty figures praised Lan Xiaoni and Enlin to the heavens. Lan Xiaoni was a little embarrassed by all of the praise. However, Enlin puffed out his chest with a nonchalant smile. Don't worry, everyone. As long as I'm around, the heavenly sea god won't dare to cause trouble in the West Sea. Good. Sect leader Enlin is the best. Sect leader Enlin is unrivaled in combat prowess. So what if he's a paramount heavenly god? He'll be devoured by sect leader Enlin sooner or later. All of the mighty figures began to yell with excitement as if they had been injected with adrenaline. The situation was getting a little out of hand. Enlin was initially trying to boost everyone's morale, but it looked like their morale was getting a little inflated. All right. Don't forget that the heavenly sea god is going to descend upon the West Sea in 3 months. When that time comes, there's going to be another massive battle, so let's make some preparations. Lan Xiaoni immediately stepped forward with a solemn expression on her face. She clearly held a lot of weight in the hearts of all of the West Sea powerful beings, and the entire palace fell silent as soon as she spoke. Lan Xiaoni began to make preparations for the upcoming battle. Meanwhile, Enlin basked in the sun beside a clear, jade-green lake. A series of lithe and graceful mermaids were tumbling around in the lake, playing with a water volleyball, and all of them were full of youthful vigor. The sun shone down on their beautiful, smooth, and supple skin, making them look as if they were made of beautiful jade. The battle between the 3 heavenly gods had only just concluded. The mermaids here were having so much fun. For some reason, Enlin felt a lot more relaxed upon seeing this peaceful and tranquil scene, and he basked in this rare moment of peace. At this moment, an old turtle slowly crawled over and offered Enlin a cup of fruit juice. This fruit juice was of quite a high rank, and it was exuding immortal rank energy fluctuations. Sect leader Enlin, I am the manager of the immortal land above water, Lu Sha. This is the most renowned starfall fruit of our 1,000-star island of the West Sea. Please enjoy. Even though the old turtle was a return-to-void stage mighty figure, his expression was still extremely respectful. Thank you. Enlin immediately picked up the fruit juice and began to enjoy it with elation. Basking in the sun while enjoying an immortal rank fruit juice while watching mermaids frolic in the ocean was truly an enjoyable experience. Lu Sha didn't leave upon seeing this. Instead, he asked in a quiet voice, Sect leader Enlin, would you be interested in the mermaids swimming in the lake? If you are, you can enjoy them as well. Cough, cough, cough. Enlin almost choked on his fruit juice. What did you say? I don't eat mermaids. They're not that perverted. Lu Sha was astonished. Were they talking about the same thing? Sect leader Enlin, I'm not talking about enjoying them as well. I'm talking about men and women. A knowing smile appeared on Lu Sha's face as he said, mermaids are regal and beautiful, as well as unique seductive abilities. These are all renowned beauties of the spirit fish clan. Their skin is extremely smooth and supple, and they're very pleasurable to the touch. They'll definitely give you a different feeling, Enlin. If you're worried that they're not willing, then you can rest assured. These are all your loyal admirers, and they're willing to do anything for you. Lu Sha chuckled. Enlin's mouth gaped open. He didn't think that the honest-looking turtle would be so shameless. "Aren't you afraid that Lan Xiaoni will hang you up and beat you up for doing all this?" Anlin asked. "I'm not afraid of being beaten up in order to make you happy," Lu Sha replied with a determined expression. "All right, then I'll do as you wish." A crisp, pleasant voice suddenly sounded from behind him, but there was a hint of frostiness in the voice. Lu Sha's turtle body shuddered, and he looked behind him to find that Lan Xiaoni had appeared behind him and was glaring at him with a cold expression. "Ah! Alliance Leader Lan, you're innocent. Please listen to me, guards. Drag Lu Sha out and hang him up and beat him up." Lan Xiaoni issued a command, and a few Spirit Fish Clan mighty figures carried Lu Sha away. Lu Sha retracted his head and limbs into his turtle shell in fear as he trembled uncontrollably with remorse. Lan Xiaoni looked at him coldly and harumphed in her heart. "You think you can take advantage of Big Boss Anlin? In your dreams. I haven't had enough yet." Chapter 1866. Anlin was a little flustered at the sight of the Spirit Fish Clan beauties frolicking in the lake. Some of them didn't even dare to play volleyball and immediately hid in the water to blow bubbles. "Big Boss Anlin, you weren't bullied by those lechers in the lake, right?" Lan Xiaoni sat down beside Anlin and spoke in a soft and gentle voice. "Of course not. Do you know who your big boss is? How could he be bullied by them?" Anlin looked at Lan Xiaoni's flawless features, as well as her snowy white skin that was so supple that he wanted to pinch it. She had a massive bust and a slender waist, and he couldn't help but sigh with emotion. His underling had already crushed them countless times over, so why did he have to enjoy other mermaids? Lan Xiaoni set up a bench beside Anlin and lay down lazily. She stretched out her slender body on the bench with a reluctant expression. "Big Boss Anlin, I heard you're leaving tomorrow?" "That's right. I still have some matters to attend to at the sect, so I can't leave for too long. If anything happens in the West Sea, we'll contact each other via voice transmission talisman," Anlin replied. Lan Xiaoni nodded and looked up at the sky in a rare moment of silence. She had waited for him for over 100 years, and they had only been together for a few days before she had to leave again. "I really hope this battle can end soon. I'm already very tired. Being the Alliance leader really isn't as fun as being a salted fish." Lan Xiaoni suddenly sighed with a forlorn expression. "Don't worry, I'll be a salted fish soon. My dream is to become an ordinary cultivator. I want to live a blissful life with no conflicts, no perils, and the occasional flexing. This dream will become a reality after the battle with the heavenly human tribe is over." Anlin felt like it was time to end this battle, no matter how he had to do it. Lan Xiaoni's eyes lit up. This was the first time she had heard Anlin talk about dreams, and this was a dream that suited her very well. "Big Boss Anlin, can I flex with you after the battle?" Anlin nodded with a smile in the face of such a refreshing request. Of course. The next morning, Lan Xiaoni bade farewell to Anlin on the immortal land above water. Anlin set off for the 4-9 Immortal Sect. His gains from this trip to the West Sea were so great that even he couldn't imagine it. Firstly, he had destroyed the heavenly weather god and the heavenly poison god, thereby obtaining the powers of weather and poison. Secondly, he had successfully cultivated all of his 5 elemental cultivation methods to perfection, successfully refined his body of the war god to the phenomenal success stage, and even comprehended the 5 elemental body, increasing his battle prowess to a level that even he couldn't understand. In the end, he had a successful meeting with the heavenly sea god and learned of the heavenly sea god's grand ambitions. Anlin glanced at the diamond-shaped crystal in his chest and began to look forward to what would happen next. In any case, the other 4 paramount heavenly gods were all going to be destroyed anyway. With the heavenly sea god's assistance, this was a win-win situation for him. As for whether or not the heavenly sea god would ascend to the throne and become the paramount being of the heavenly Tao, that could wait until he killed the 4 paramount heavenly gods. He felt that things were going well. He had reaped far too many rewards, and it was as if he could get whatever he wanted. And Lin couldn't help but look up at the sky. Could it be that the heavens were looking out for him? But he was a man who was going to fight the heavens, so why would the heavens be looking out for him? What kind of crazy person was this? Achoo! The heavenly life goddess suddenly sneezed as she sat on a branch of the divine tree. Ha! That's awkward. I got scolded. She twirled a few strands of hair around her fingers as she spoke with a smile. And Lin has become a lot more powerful. Our efforts have not been in vain. A voice suddenly sounded from the sky. How powerful has he become? The heavenly life goddess asked. He's invincible below the paramount heavenly god level. As for the specific number, I can't calculate it. We'll only know after we fight. The heavenly heaven god replied in an indifferent voice. Can he force the paramount heavenly god's true form of Tao out of his body? The heavenly life goddess asked with a smile. Of course not, the heavenly heaven god replied in a straightforward manner. The true form of Tao is the ultimate power of paramount heavenly gods like us. We'll only use it when we're forced into a corner. And Lin doesn't have the right to force us to do that. Then what can he do? The heavenly life goddess was a little displeased. We just need him to keep the heavenly sea god at bay for a while. I'm sure Lin has a very good chance of doing that, the heavenly heaven god replied. A faint smile appeared on the heavenly life goddess' face. That's true. As long as light, earth, and sea are either severely wounded or killed, no one will be able to stop us. I hope the battle comes soon, and I hope he doesn't disappoint us. At the 4-9 Immortal sect, thousands of idol disciples lined up once again, shouting slogans and loudly welcoming the triumphant return of the sovereign. Bai Ling, why do you always get me to come back in advance? And Lin looked at the youthful and enthusiastic disciples with a speechless expression. A woman with a hint of a smile on her face stepped forward. You don't know anything about the power of science, so you wouldn't understand even if I explained it to you. And Lin, by the way, how was your trip, sect leader? Bai Ling asked. Not bad. I killed 2 heavenly gods, and Lin replied in an indifferent voice. All of the spectating disciples were astonished again. There was only one thought in their minds. Sect leader is bad *SS. Every time he went out, he either destroyed the heavenly gate or killed heavenly gods. He felt like killing 1 or 2 heavenly gods was as easy as drinking water for him, and he was almost blinding them. It really was worth it for them to line up here to welcome him. Every time they heard news about him, it was always so inspiring, and they wanted to kneel before him. That's right, Lin was the unparalleled hero they were waiting for. Bai Ling's expression had always been cold and aloof, but she couldn't help but blush upon hearing Lin's words, and her beautiful eyes lit up. Really? That's so impressive. Which 2 heavenly gods did you kill? Don't worry, we'll talk about it during the meeting. Lin smiled. Bai Ling pursed her lips and grumbled in her heart, You're just trying to show off when there are more people in the meeting, right? Oh, by the way, there's something else I want to tell you, Bai Ling suddenly said. What is it? Lin asked. Someone wants to spar with you. A mysterious smile appeared on Bai Ling's face. Spar? Lin suddenly became excited. Who is it? He was just fretting over the fact that he had no one to test his strength against after becoming more powerful. This spar was perfect. Bai Ling smiled. He's been waiting for you for 3 days. He's on the drill ground. Oh, right, his name is the Battling Buddha. Chapter 1867. The Battling Buddha. Lin's eyes gradually lit up. He is indeed a good opponent. Firstly, they were familiar with each other, so it would be easier for them to communicate. Secondly, the monkey was very powerful, so he could fight to his heart's content. Thirdly, the monkey was a seasoned veteran, so even if Lin accidentally injured his opponent, it probably wouldn't mind. Then, sect leader, are you going to have a meeting first, or are you going to spar first? Bai Ling asked. Everyone else is already waiting. It's not a good idea to have a meeting first, is it? Unlin blinked. A faint smile appeared on Bai Ling's face. He's already been waiting for so long, so it doesn't matter if he waits a little longer. This was a good suggestion, but Unlin didn't have the heart to reject it. He had to entertain his friend first, so Unlin decided to spar first. On the drill ground of the 4-9 Immortal sect, there were already over 10,000 disciples gathered here, and all of them were gathered around the majestic monkey. The monkey was handsome, and his eyes were like bright stars. He wore a golden crown on his head, and he wore a suit of iridescent armor. His body was extremely muscular and intimidating, and just by standing there with his golden-banded staff in his hand, he had already attracted the attention of over 10,000 disciples. Hey, did you know? I heard that he's going to spar with our sect leader. Is there anyone in the sect who doesn't know about this? This is the most important event in the entire sect. I wonder if our sect leader will accept the challenge. Isn't that obvious? Our sect leader hates the heavens and the earth. Why would he be afraid of a monkey's challenge? If he comes back, he's definitely going to come and fight us. A female disciple spoke without any hesitation. It could be said that she knew their sect leader very well. I really admire the battling Buddha. To think that he would dare to spar with our sect leader. I wonder how many punches he can take. Don't underestimate the battling Buddha. He's a super mighty figure at the Tao integration pinnacle stage of the Buddhist kingdom, second only to the Gautama Buddha. Apparently, he's also a heavenly disciple candidate of the heaven-crushing sect. So, how many punches can he take from our sect leader? The disciples were all excitedly discussing this matter. Although the battling Buddha was very powerful, their sect leader was even more invincible. In the hearts of the disciples, Unlin had already surpassed everything else. He was an invincible god of war, and they had never considered the possibility of losing. All they cared about was how many punches the battling Buddha could take. Sect elder Yao Mingshi made a conservative estimate. If Unlin was just having a friendly sparring match, it would probably take several hundred rounds. If he went all out, he would probably be able to defeat the battling Buddha within a dozen rounds. Most of the disciples agreed with this statement. A black brick suddenly descended from the sky. The disciples on the field burst into enthusiastic cheers. Their Lord Sovereign had returned. Su Xiaolan leaned on Goldie's back. Her green clothes wrapped around her delicate body, and her clear eyes stared at the man who had returned. She looked rather helpless and jealous as she said, "Sigh. It wasn't easy to come back, but the first thing I thought of was to fight." A hearty laughter came from the sky. "Ha ha! Brother Wukong, sorry to keep you waiting." The battling Buddha gripped the golden-banded staff tightly in his hand as he looked up at the man in the sky with a smile on his face. "It won't be long. I'm more than willing to wait a year for a chance to battle with Brother Unlin." Unlin's white robe danced around him as a burst of clear energy erupted from his body. A dazzling golden Buddhist light also erupted from the battling Buddha's body. His benevolence was imbued with surging battle intent, as if he were trying to enlighten his opponent through battle. Their auras erupted at the same time. Gale force winds instantly swept through heaven and earth. All of the disciples were struck by a sense of asphyxiation, and some of them were even unable to stand up straight. The combined auras of the two of them were far too terrifying. Even though they weren't being targeted, they were still unable to withstand the fearsome auras that were being released unintentionally. "If you're going to fight, please move to another location. This place isn't suitable for you," Bai Ling said in an indifferent voice. Unlin nodded upon hearing this, and he turned to the battling Buddha. "How about we switch to another location and fight on the Great Grassland?" "That's exactly what I want. The Great Grassland is great. I feel like I won't be able to unleash my full power in a sect battle." The battling Buddha immediately agreed. The two of them began to fly toward the Great Grassland outside the sect. There were also a bunch of spectating disciples trailing behind them. Meanwhile, Bai Ling silently fortified the 4-9 immortal sect's defensive barrier and used her spatial power to keep all of the spectating disciples at bay. Are you all in such a hurry to die? Without anyone to protect you, sect leader Enlin will be able to reduce all of you to mincemeat with a single punch. All of the disciples finally came to their senses. Their sect leader was an extremely terrifying being to them. He was a powerful being that they didn't even have the right to spectate from the sidelines. However, you don't have to be too disappointed. My Purple Star satellite will be broadcasting this battle in high definition from this drill ground, Bai Ling said with a smile. Long live Pavilion Lord Bai. Big Sister Bai is the best. I finally get to see sect leader Enlin battle the battling Buddha. I'm so excited. All of the disciples immediately began to yell with excitement. Soon, an image appeared on the drill ground. Enlin and the battling Buddha had already landed on a boundless grassland, and they were locked in a standoff. Even though all of the disciples weren't looking at an actual person, they were still affected by the tense atmosphere, and all of them stared intently at the image in fear of missing even a single instant. On a boundless grassland over 5,000 kilometers away from the 4-9 immortal sect, Enlin and the battling Buddha were locked in a standoff. Brother Wukong, seeing as you're the one who challenged me, I'll give you the chance to attack me first. Enlin clasped his hands behind his back as he spoke in an indifferent voice. If that's the case, then be careful, brother En. The battling Buddha was not an indecisive person. He had been looking forward to this battle for a long time. He had invited Enlin to the Buddhist kingdom, but Enlin didn't have the time to come, so he decided to come to the 4-9 immortal sect. He was a powerful being who lived for battle, and he felt like he would regret it if he didn't have a good battle against a powerful being like Enlin. Take this, old son. Heaven-piercing staff. Boom. A golden-banded staff hurtled through the air as it continued to expand. Heaven and earth had been transformed into a vast expanse of golden light. Enlin was struck by an extremely powerful sense of pressure from the oncoming golden-banded staff. Ha! Perfect timing. The battling Buddha was at the Tao integration pinnacle stage, and Enlin wanted to see if his phenomenal success stage body of the war god would be able to withstand an attack from a being at the Tao integration pinnacle stage. He stood on the spot and allowed the golden-banded staff to strike him. Boom! The long and thick golden-banded staff crashed into Enlin's body in an extremely violent manner, sending him flying for over 50 kilometers before finally coming to a stop, leaving a deep trench in the ground. Brother Enlin, you dare to look down on me? I'm not going to hold back. A satisfied smile appeared on the battling Buddha's face. That felt good, Enlin sighed with ecstasy. Chapter 1868. The battling Buddha's staff crashed into Enlin's body with boundless power, making his body of the war god's blood churn. The battling Buddha's eyebrows trembled slightly. His defenses are this tough? No wonder he was able to take my staff head-on. Watch this move of mine! The golden-banded staff in his hand quickly shrank, but his body rose high into the sky as he raised the golden-banded staff high into the air. Boundless Buddhist light imbued with the aura of great benevolence and might surged through the heavens before rainbow light suddenly converged on the staff. Countless peculiar scenes appeared behind the battling Buddha. Some were bustling mortal worlds, some were beautiful immortal realms, some were battlefields riddled with blood, and some were hells where evil ghosts and living beings wailed in anguish. Battling Buddha, great thousand-world explosion. Buddha's true intent imbued with great benevolence combined with the great thousand-world before converging on the golden-banded staff, making it exude earth-shattering might that could puncture an entire world. Brother Enlin, let's see how you're going to take my staff. The battling Buddha let loose an enraged roar as his golden-banded staff came crashing down from the sky. The ground within a radius of several hundred kilometers had already caved in before the staff had even reached Enlin. Enlin's entire body trembled. This was a very powerful power, and he really liked it. He extended a hand to defend himself against the descending staff. Bam! A Buddhist light exploded as heaven and earth tremored violently. The earth within a radius of several hundred kilometers was instantly punctured, creating an unfathomably deep abyss within which boundless Buddhist light surged. All of the spectating disciples' hearts leaped into their throats upon seeing this. Even Bai Ling, Su Xiaolan, and the other top-rate powerful beings were getting a little concerned. They believed that Enlin would win, but they didn't think that Enlin would be careless enough to take the battling Buddha's attack with his own body. One had to realize that the battling Buddha had unleashed his full power of the divine Tao to unleash this attack. Even weaker Tao integration stage super mighty figures would have been insta-killed by that attack, yet Enlin was using his hand to block it? Enlin will be fine, right? Su Xiaolan spread her holy flame wings and flew into the sky, looking into the distance. Hee, it's fine as long as he's not dead. It's a good thing that he's been taught a lesson for underestimating his opponent. Bai Ling chuckled coldly as she adjusted the zoom of the satellite to capture an image of Enlin. However, in the next second, an even more unbelievable scene appeared. The golden-banded staff was rapidly rising into the air, and even though the battling Buddha was suppressing the golden-banded staff with all his might, he was unable to stop it from rising. With one hand on the bottom of the Jingu Bang, Enlin slowly rose into the air with a calm expression. His white clothes were still spotless, and there were no wounds on his body. You accepted it? The victorious fighting Buddha monkey's eyes widened and he couldn't maintain his composure. You actually took on my great thousand-world explosion with your bare hands? In his mind, if Enlin didn't use his powers of the heavenly gods, then his combat prowess should be about the same as his own. But now, Enlin had taken on his most powerful attack with his bare hands? That's a pretty good attack. Keep it up, I can still handle it. Enlin's eyes glowed with excitement as he held the golden-banded staff in one hand. The battling Buddha almost threw up a mouthful of blood upon hearing this. You want to keep it up? That's already all the power I can muster. Do you want me to sacrifice my life for you? Enlin was extremely elated. An opponent at the Tao integration pinnacle stage was perfect for him to test the limits of his body. The battling Buddha's attack had made his blood boil, but he was still a little far from his limit. After all, he hadn't even unleashed his 5-elemental body yet, so he was hoping that the battling Buddha would be able to give him a few more attacks. The battling Buddha really wanted to say, I'm fine now. However, he couldn't. As the battling Buddha, he couldn't say no. The Monkey King's eyes suddenly became as dazzling as the sun, and holy flames that could incinerate all things burst forth. If physical attacks didn't work, then he would use spell techniques. Boom! Golden holy flames exploded on Enlin's body, and it was as if a golden sun were proliferating outward. The scorching heat wave spread out in a ring shape, instantly burning the green grass to ashes wherever it passed. However, the battling Buddha didn't even have a chance to check on Enlin before he discovered that the holy flames erupting from his eyes were being engulfed by something. Enlin's mouth gaped open, and he swallowed all of the holy flames unleashed by the battling Buddha in less than 3 seconds. Phew! What pure flames! They taste quite good. Enlin gave the battling Buddha a thumbs up. However, now that things have come to this, there's no need for us to test each other anymore, right? Let's use our true powers and have a good fight. The battling Buddha's teeth were chattering. Use his true powers? But he had just used his true powers. He had been provoked by Enlin, and he was feeling an indescribable sense of panic. However, a thought suddenly occurred to the battling Buddha, and he discovered another possibility, which was that Enlin was trying to provoke his enemy into thinking that he was very powerful in order to weaken their momentum. That's right, this was a psychological tactic. The battling Buddha was enlightened. The battling Buddha roared as his body abruptly expanded, transforming into a massive monkey god over 10,000 feet tall. An immortal aura emanated from his body, creating an extremely fearsome sight to behold. Unlin, don't think I'm scared of you. Come on, punch me. I'll crush you fair and square. The battling Buddha roared with rage, and just the sound waves from his voice alone caused the ground within a radius of tens of thousands of meters to tremor violently. Ha ha! As you wish. Unlin's emotions were also affected by the battling Buddha's monstrous battle intent, and he immediately unleashed the power of his body of the war god to its maximal extent before unleashing a fist toward the massive monkey god. The battling Buddha also unleashed a fist that was enshrouded in boundless Buddhist light. At this moment, everyone stared intently at the scenes unfolding before their eyes. This was going to be an extremely intense and evenly matched battle. Not only did they think this way, but Unlin and the battling Buddha were also of the same opinion. The two fists clashed, and the might of their fists exploded forth. Bam! The battling Buddha's mountainous fist suddenly exploded. Then came his flesh, then his bones. Immediately afterward, his entire arm was pulverized by an invisible force. Not only that, but the radius of the fist projection was far more than just an arm. The space before Unlin was completely blasted apart, and the fist projection was like an invincible divine mountain crashing into the battling Buddha's chest, upon which a massive hole several hundred meters in diameter was blasted open. Pfff, the battling Buddha threw up a mouthful of blood, and his body was blasted flying for several hundred kilometers before tumbling to the ground in an extremely disheveled manner. The massive monkey god struggled a few times on the ground, only to find that he was unable to get up. Silence. Deathly silence. Everyone stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before their eyes. One punch. Unlin had only unleashed one punch. He had completely crippled the battling Buddha. Chapter 1869. This can't be real. Sect leader Unlin only used one punch? The battling Buddha is the second most powerful being in the Buddhist kingdom and a heavenly disciple candidate of the heaven-crushing sect. How could he not even take a single punch from our sect leader? All of the disciples knew that their sect leader was bad *SS, but they didn't think that he would be bad *SS enough to vanquish such a powerful enemy with just one punch. Wasn't this supposed to be a friendly sparring session that could last over a dozen rounds? Why was it that his opponent replied GG after just one punch? Was this monkey too weak? No, the battling Buddha, exploding world that the monkey had given them was still fresh in their mind. This wasn't the monkey's fault. It was all because their sect leader was too bad *SS. All of the disciples were astonished once again. They were extremely embarrassed by the fact that they didn't understand how bad *SS their sect leader was. Godin, I'm so sorry. I'm an idiot. Yao Mingxi's #1 diehard fan was already shedding tears of remorse. What? Big brother, I'm also at fault. Yao Xiao was also sobbing uncontrollably. I thought Godin would need a dozen or so punches to defeat the battling Buddha. How could I look down on my idol like this? All of the disciples were either astonished or remorseful. Su Xiaolan, Little Huang, Long Aotian, and Bai Ling were all given a huge fright. They knew very well what Unlin's punch entailed. It was a metamorphosis of power. What did Unlin experience in the West Sea? Bai Ling murmured to herself. It's going to be a lot of pressure to become more powerful alongside him. A vibrant smile appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. I have to work hard as well. At this moment, Unlin had already rushed over to the battling Buddha and gave him an immortal pill to recover from his injuries. Brother Wukong, I'm really sorry. I didn't think that I would be so heavy-handed. After my power skyrocketed, I'm a little confused about my own position. I'm really sorry. Unlin held the battling Buddha in his arms as he apologized profusely. The battling Buddha had already returned to his original form, but he was missing an arm and half of his chest had been blasted away, and he was coughing up blood relentlessly. He looked at Unlin with a dazed expression. Am I really that weak? C***nt? I can't even take a punch from you. No, you're not weak. I'm the one who's too strong. Enlin consoled. Tears welled up in the battling Buddha's eyes as he listened to Enlin's words of consolation. I'm so stupid. He shouldn't have asked for this duel. The last time they had separated, they had been evenly matched in terms of combat prowess. Even if Enlin was slightly more powerful than him, there was a limit to how powerful he was. The battling Buddha felt like this was going to be a satisfying battle. However, they had only been separated for less than a year, and when they met again to exchange pointers, how was he instantly defeated? He wanted to gain inspiration through battle, not experience the feeling of smashing a rock with an egg. The battling Buddha was still in a state of self-doubt. Enlin consoled him in a gentle voice, and the battling Buddha's emotions became a little unstable. In the end, Bai Ling had to step in to calm the battling Buddha down. Bai Ling took the battling Buddha to the nursing home for treatment. After this battle, Enlin developed a clearer understanding of his own combat prowess. His regular combat prowess had already transcended beyond the Tao integration pinnacle stage. As for how far he had progressed, he didn't have anyone to refer to. He thought back to all of the powerful enemies he had faced in the past, and if he had to make a comparison, he felt like he was about as powerful as the half-step god of creation stage ancient fiend celestial in the spirit realm. As for how powerful he would be after activating his 5-elemental body, he didn't know, and he didn't dare to think about it. Enlin's battle with the battling Buddha created a massive stir in the 4-9 immortal sect. Before he knew it, he had gained another wave of fanatical fans, and countless disciples worshipped him as a god. However, this wasn't what Enlin wanted to see. If things continued like this, the entire 4-9 immortal sect was going to become his fanatical fanbase. Enlin had no choice but to convene all of the pavilion lords and elders of the 4-9 immortal sect for an important conference. During the conference, he elaborated on his experiences in the West Sea, his glorious battle, his invincible body, and the divine cultivation method he had mastered, upon which he received another wave of shock and admiration. Of course, he still had to keep the heavenly sea god a secret. This wasn't because he was wary of his friends. Instead, he was worried that the other paramount heavenly gods would sense something amiss. 2 hours later, Enlin walked out of the conference room in high spirits after bragging. He was going to slack off for a while and wait for the heavenly sea god to descend on the Tai Chu continent in 3 months. Su Xiaolan followed behind Enlin and tugged on Enlin's sleeve as she looked at him with her bright eyes. Enlin, I feel like you've been very tense ever since you came back. You've clearly become so powerful, so why are you feeling so much pressure? Enlin faltered slightly before a warm smile appeared on his face. You've figured that out too? As expected of Xiaolan. However, I can't tell you about this for now. I'm afraid that someone might be eavesdropping. Su Xiaolan pursed her lips with an earnest expression. That's all right, I understand. If there's anything you need me to do, feel free to tell me. Enlin couldn't help but stroke her delicate nose with an amused expression. Then I want you to cook for me every day. I haven't tasted Chef Goddess Xiaolan's cooking for a long time. No problem. There are over 100 different flavors, over 1,000 different ingredients, and over 10,000 different cooking methods. You can choose anything you like. There's nothing that you can't think of, but there's nothing that I, Chef Lan, can't do. Su Xiaolan patted her chest proudly. The two of them chatted and laughed as they returned to their living quarters. That night, Enlin tasted Su Xiaolan's love dinner. That flavor was the flavor of true love. It was so delicious that Enlin still wanted more, and he became an insatiable man. After a hearty meal, the two of them went to the summit of the full moon mountain and gazed at the stars together. Taking a break from work and enjoying the moment was the two's daily life in the sect. Their days were fulfilling and blissful. Look, Enlin, the white moon is getting brighter and brighter, but the red moon in the sky is starting to dim. Su Xiaolan pointed at the 2 moons in the sky with an elated expression. The moonlight shone down on her beautiful features, making her appear as if she were a holy maiden from the heavens. Anlin naturally knew what the brightness of the 2 moons in the sky represented. He was also quite elated. Chang'e has the upper hand? Wasn't she looking like she was going to lose last time? Last time, she was targeted by a certain power of the heavenly Tao because she was a human. Otherwise, she wouldn't have lost to a newbie who suddenly wanted to reach the Tao integration stage after preparing for so long, Su Xiaolan explained. Anlin was quite curious. Then how did she gain the upper hand this time? Chapter 1870. Su Xiaolan pointed toward the northeastern direction with a smile. This is all thanks to Nuwa's mending of the heavens. She's indirectly assisting big sister Chang'e. Anlin came to a sudden realization upon hearing this. That's right, after the heavenly Tao became complete, the subconsciousness was able to further repress the heavenly gods and the heavenly human tribe. These heavenly gods are the main force targeting the human race, so Chang'e must have been targeted by them as well. Now that Nuwa is mending the heavens and using the perfected heavenly Tao subconsciousness to suppress the heavenly gods, the power targeting Chang'e has most likely also been repressed, and it's been repressed quite severely, thereby giving Chang'e a chance to turn the tables. He raised his goblet full of immortal wine to the full moon in the sky and laughed heartily. Congratulations! Congratulations, Chang'e! I propose a toast to you. In a battle between the 2 moons, one of them had to die. When he learned that Chang'e was on the back foot, he had been extremely concerned, but there was nothing he could do. After all, that meant that Chang'e was most likely going to die. However, Chang'e was now able to turn the tables. This meant that not only was she not going to die, she was going to reach unprecedented heights. As a friend, Anlin was quite elated. During the next few days, the white moon in the sky became brighter and brighter, while the red moon became dimmer and dimmer. If there were no mishaps, Chang'e's victory was already a foregone conclusion. At the same time, on the distant Earth, on the famous Earth, a dazzling galaxy of stars stretched across the entire universe. Within a massive spatial gate between the 2 worlds, a white figure suddenly flew out. He had a pair of wings on his back, and he flew extremely quickly, sending ripples sweeping through the air. He traveled 5 kilometers in the blink of an eye, and a white crystalline barrier enshrouded his body, which was powerful enough to keep any weapon on Earth at bay. However, he had only flown for 50 kilometers before crashing heavily into a powerful enchantment barrier. There's a big fish this time. A little girl with delicate and flawless features muttered as her eyes lit up. The blue starry sky formation expanded with her at the center, completely surrounding the other party. Oh no, no wonder we lost contact with those who went in. It turns out that there was a top-notch formation ambush. The man was a great general of the heavenly human tribe, and his expression changed drastically upon seeing this. He immediately flapped his wings and flew away at top speed in an attempt to retreat into the spatial gate. His speed was extremely fast, and his explosive power was comparable to that of a Tao integration stage supermighty figure. Hey, you came to Earth as a guest. Are you going back so soon? A clear and melodious voice came from the front. A voluptuous woman in a pink Lolita dress with white rabbit ears had appeared in front of the heavenly human tribe great general's escape route. Get lost! The heavenly human tribe great general let loose an enraged roar, and holy light suddenly descended from above before converging in her hand to form an extremely substantial light sword that was several kilometers in length, which she then slashed violently toward the woman. Wow! What a powerful slash! The woman cried out in alarm. Then, she raised her slender and beautiful leg and swung it. Bam! The powerful light sword unleashed by the heavenly human tribe great general was shattered by a single kick from the woman. This! The heavenly human tribe great general's eyes widened, and his mind went completely blank. Since when had his attacks become so fragile? Even a Tao integration stage super mighty figure would have to tread carefully in the face of his attack. Could it be, in the next instant, a pair of white rabbit ears appeared before him. The woman's body was slightly hunched over, and her rabbit ears were almost glued to his head. She withdrew her fists, which were enshrouded by a faint pink light, and an indescribably terrifying energy fluctuation erupted forth, threatening to freeze the surrounding space for all eternity. Spirit power, rabbit powder, heaven-crushing fist. Bam! The fist hurtled through the air. Heaven-crushing true intent instantly tore through the heavenly human tribe great general's defenses. The boundless spirit power was even more dazzling than the galaxy before him. The heavenly human tribe great general's expression was one of shock and horror, but before he had a chance to do anything, his body was completely pulverized into dust by the power of the fist. The rabbit maiden slowly withdrew her fist as an expression of shock appeared on her face. What a powerful enemy! To think that he could take 2 of my punches. I wonder what kind of fearsome challenges he's going to face next. Xiao Fu was speechless. You insta-killed him with 1 strike, and you're telling him that he could take 2 of your punches? Is this a new form of mockery? The rabbit maiden spoke with a serious expression. Cultivation is not an easy task. We should give the dead their final dignity. Xiao Fu. The rabbit maiden sent a text message to Enlin. The rabbit maiden became the guardian deity of Earth again today and successfully protected Earth. Also, when are you going to deliver the food you cooked? Within the white nectar sea. Atop the divine tree. Great General Long Ing is dead. The woman with long green hair opened her orange eyes and murmured to herself. He didn't even get a chance to escape after entering that place for less than a minute. It's quite clear that there are at least 3 Tao integration stage super mighty figures guarding that place. Nuwa sure is generous. Nuwa has already been enraged and mended the heavens in advance. We've already achieved our objective, so why do you still want to destroy Earth? The heavenly heaven god's voice sounded from above. A faint smile appeared on the woman's face. Enlin hasn't been enraged yet. He's definitely going to be very sad and enraged if we kill all of his friends and family. The heavenly heaven god fell silent for a moment before replying, What's the point? Enlin is going to fight the light land and the sea sooner or later. If we enrage him, he might even turn on us. No, that won't happen. He will view all heavenly humans and heavenly gods as enemies. Perhaps he can release the demons in his heart and become even more powerful. That would be beneficial to us as well, wouldn't it? The woman replied in an indifferent voice. Then who do you want to send? The heavenly heaven god asked. The powerful beings guarding Earth are most likely not as simple as you think they are. We have a rough idea of where the god of creation and Enlin are. Neither of them has appeared on Earth. No matter how powerful the powerful beings on Earth are, can they be more powerful than gods of creation? I'll just send a heavenly god. The heavenly life goddess smiled. Nuwa will quickly react to the arrival of the heavenly gods. If we take too long, the heavenly gods will be in grave danger. The heavenly heaven god said. If that's the case, then we'll send the heavenly gods who are most suited to slaughter living beings. The heavenly life goddess smiled. The heavenly heaven god. Who? The heavenly life goddess. Spirit, come out. A semi-transparent green lizard dragon with a pair of wings on its back suddenly appeared before the woman before falling to its knees. Goddess of life, did you summon me? How long would it take to destroy a particle energy civilization with 10 to 5 Tao integration stage super mighty figures and less than 10 return to void stage super mighty figures? The heavenly life goddess asked. Do we need to kill Tao integration stage super mighty figures? The lizard dragon asked. No, just kill the other humans, the heavenly life goddess replied. 10 seconds. I only need 10 seconds, the heavenly mind goddess replied with a serious expression. Even the heavenly heaven god was a little surprised to hear this. However, the heavenly life goddess chuckled. See? The most convenient and efficient way to destroy 10 billion living beings isn't through physical destruction. Instead, it's through mental destruction. In particular, if a high-rank living being attacks a low-rank living being, a spiritual attack that encompasses the entire planet will be enough to ensure that no living beings are able to escape. What does the heavenly life goddess need me to do? The heavenly mind god asked in a humble yet pious voice. The heavenly life goddess waved a hand. Go and destroy all living beings on earth.